they wouldn't be telling us this much already if they were holding punches, and I know that. Yes.
Where does the main tension come in on the natural grid lines? Where does the main tension get to?
Okay, if you go back to remembering I talked about the planetary shields, remember there are those diagrams in the Cathara book that showed a couple of circles vertically stacked, right? And those circles each represented a shield for each four of the four densities. You know, shield 1, dimension 1, 2, 3, shield 2, dimension 4, 5, 6, shield 3, dimension 7, 8, 9, shield 4, dimension 10, 11, 12. Now, in that diagram, you also then have to go digging back through the other book to get it. In that diagram, you had 3 circles in each one of those shields. They were called signets. They were the 3 primary stargates in that shield that would receive the energy from the solar spirals once it came down from the higher dimensional fields. The center point, 1, was the one that controlled the other 2. That's called the Gruel point, or the Holy Grail point. That's the point in the planetary shield that will receive the energy. That is the point where the stellar bridge grounded in January 1st, 2000.
So where is that?
That is in Sarasota, Florida. That's why we were asked to go there. This is what I was talking about. Okay? This right here, in relation to the planetary grids, would be Sarasota, Florida. Right here, number 2. Okay? This would go with Tara. Okay, density 2. This would go with Gaia in density 3. And this would go with Argentana, which is what it's connected to in density 4. So, literally, there was a frequency that came down through the universal Cathara grid, through the stargates there, comes down through our solar spiral and anchored here into Sarasota, Florida. It's Gruel Point. It's right off the coast of Sarasota in the Gulf of Mexico. And it didn't used to be underwater, but it is now. Okay. Now, interestingly, too, on this graph, all of the little circles, the ones that have circles in them, they're all Stargate sites. Okay? There are those 12 primary Stargate sites. And they are all the Stargate sites listed. I also wanted to point out something. In the New Age movement, you hear all about that 11, 11, 12, 12 stuff, right? Some people have heard of that. The Anunnaki were bringing that stuff through. It started to come through when they were beginning to introduce the fact that they had entered the Animal Covenant, and they were going to work what was called the 11, 11, 12, 12 mission, which was the Christos realignment mission. This comes from these grid lines. If you'll notice that right here, which goes through Gate 11 and Stonehenge, that's the 11, 1 axiatonal line. That means line 1 and 11 run together there. And if you notice here, what crosses through it on horizontal is ley line number 11, 1. So this is the 11, 11 point, okay? Over here, you have line 12. It's coming out of Gate 12. It's in France. And it crosses through, the numbers are screwed. This one here is, where is it? This one over here goes into 12. So we have the 12, 12 and the 11, 11. But this was always the gate. This is the trump card gate for the guardian races. This 12th dimensional frequency, the Maharada frequency, can override everything below it and reset it to its natural pattern. When they were bringing through the 11, 11, 12, 12 information, it was while they were still entertaining the thought of being part of the Animal Covenant, where we're going to use this and combine with this to flip this over to the positive 12 codes to get the grids restored. Alright, so that's what all that 11, 11, 12, 12 stuff was. Now what's happening is they're running the 11 dominant, 11 reverse mission, but they're going to try to get the grids running from there, which means they're going to have to implode this Stargate, okay, at some point. Now, they don't have any plans to do that immediately. First they have to get control of the place. Then they will block it in the meantime. What we're doing is getting frequencies in to override this and then connect it to this. So we're still doing the 11, 11, 12, 12 mission, the Christos realignment mission. So all of these ley lines, these are math. I wish the book was ready to give to you, but it's another 250 or 230 page book. There's only a couple more graphs on the DNA that have to be finished. They didn't even tell me there was going to be a course book for this other than the field manual. So this was like, surprise! Here, put this together this way. It has, some of it has some of the stuff from Cathara, because it was created in a way that people that didn't take Cathara had at least an introduction to what Cathara grid is and the body parts that go with it, so they can understand what it means to run a Merkaba. And it's going to end up as the Roundtables course book. Alright, so it will be available as soon as we get back and get those couple of drafts done. And it will be available, you can get it printed at home at a decent rate. That was another big deterrent here, was that at a time we could only find, 20 cents a sheet. sheet they were charging. We found out recently that there's other places. There's not enough time to get them done at this point. Yes, yeah. I'm not sure how we're going to price them because it depends on how much we have to pay for them. We keep them as close to cost as we possibly can, cost with shipping. But, because we want to get the information too. That's why we gave, with this group, we were able to give the Catharo books for free. In New York, we had to buy them because we couldn't afford to do the printing on them, and just give them as part of the workshops. Okay.
Can we just buy copies of those two charts?
I don't have extra copies of them right now, but
Buy them? Would you have to do a them?
I don't know. I guess I'd have to talk it over with my business consultant. I guess that's okay. I'll have to ask these guys too if it's okay to release those without the information that goes with them, because that could be used for the other side. Okay. If I start releasing those, anybody can send in, get a copy of these, and start trying to counteract what we're doing. And guaranteed, there will be those who will be guided to do that. So I have to get permission on that one, to be honest with you. If it was up to me, like I should or whatever. But I have to ask permission on that one, and we'll have to consult on that. Because at least this way it's presented with the whole context of what it's about, where it explains what the problem is, and those kind of things. Okay, now I want to show you one more thing on this graph, this little 8-pointed star graph. This one, this shows the transmission lines for the little nasty grid, for the checkerboard matrix grid. These are just the main transmission lines, all right? All along each one of these, there's little versions of that. So it'll like be having lots of those little starbursts running all along them, sending out other lines. These go through all over the place. They're running through houses. They're running through. They're running through the whole planetary grid, literally. England, poor England, because you can see when you draw, on the map, you can't even see anymore. There's so many. They all come together there, and what's interesting is because of this, there has been a whole political drama that has been going on for the last 25,000 years. And all of our known history is part of that drama. What isn't usually known is right now there's a lot of races that call themselves a certain name that it wasn't even their original name. They have had history transposed through their cultures, forced on them. In the early days, it was forced. Buy this or die. It's basically like you wanted to take, make somebody convert to a different religious dogma. They would raid, the tribes, human tribes, and at this point, everybody had their memory wiped, all right, because of the grids. And they would come in. If you didn't cooperate and become what they told you to become, you would be killed, or your family, or all of you, or your whole town. So this was going on repeatedly. One of the fascinating things with the Irish people is I've looked a little bit at what supposedly is the origin of the Irish people. And supposedly they're connected to these old raider tribes that used to paint themselves blue and come in and raid things. The rowdy guys, they were like the Celts. They were the supposed source of the Irish people. That is a lie. That is a total lie. That is not the Irish people's history. The Irish people were Atlanteans. They were guardians of Q-side 11 and Gate 11, both, because they're both connected. They were the Celtics. The Celtics were Magi Grail. Because it was so dangerous to have that known, especially the ones to guard Gate 11, they were taken over by two groups, actually. One of them was a group of Anunnaki hybrid that was called the Saxion. Yeah, Saxons. Came down as Saxons, the Saxion. And the other were called the Vickers. You got it. These were raider races that came in and took over the peoples of Tribe 11. The Celtic peoples were the leaders, the Magi line, the guardians, the Tribe 11 knowledge, and the Tribe 11 gate. And they hold in the DNA the 11 gate codes. This is not the only race that this has happened to. Literally all of the races have had their history and their identity transposed into something that wasn't. They did this with the Hebrew peoples. The story of the Exodus was not a Hebrew Exodus. It was the Hyksos Exodus, the Midianites. They were not Hebrews. They were an Anunnaki hybrid race that was part of the super race campaign that came in, tried to take over Egypt, did for a while as the Hyksos kings, then got kicked out by Drax, I believe, where they came over, took over the Pharaonic lines, and the Hyksos had to get out of Egypt because they were being persecuted after they persecuted the Egyptians for a while. And the Galactic Federation made them a promise, because they were their pet super race, the Hyksos. They were to go over into the lands that are not Israel, and they were to take over and destroy Hebrew tribe 2. They were the guardians of Vortis 2 and coded for 2 different gates, which were Gate 4, Giza, and Gate 2, which was the Brual point. Unfortunately, the Exodus wasn't as fully successful as they had hoped. The only way they could do this was through 2 instruments called the rod and the staff. These were instruments, mechanical instruments, that were given by the Guardian races after the 9005 AD Atlantean flood. They were given to the Guardian Magi races so that they would have the ability to manually open the inner Earth portals so they could go back and forth and keep contact with the other, rail lines and Guardian lines in inner Earth. This is when the big gold box came into our history. There's a big gold box that was made to hold the rod and the staff, and the original one is lead-lined because the rod and the staff are radioactive. The radioactive tools, photoradionic, which is a little bit different than radioactive here, but it's more powerful, and it can kill you if your DNA can't hold the frequency of it. So this gold box lined with lead was created in order to block, to hold those frequencies so they didn't contaminate people. Well, our whole history has been this utterly ridiculous cat and mouse game. Once that box was created, all of the hybrid races that were being motivated by various fallen angelics, it was the quest for the box, the Ark of the Covenant, the big gold box. Because anybody that could get a hold of the rod and the staff tools, if they could get into them, and if they could get them activated remote, which if you hit it with a beam ship beam from one of the photoradionic ships that the Galactic Federation has, you could activate it that way, even though you didn't have the human codes to activate it with your hand. So literally, our whole history, it's funny, they gave me, at some point it will be integrated into some of the writings, the travels of this box, since its creation in 9005 BC. It has been the most well-traveled box in the universe. First he stole it, then they stole it, then we stole it back, then they stole it, then we stole it back, then they stole it. It's been going round and round, usually throughout the Middle East. It has gone to Egypt. It has gone it's gone to Egypt, it's gone to Israel, it's gone to Africa, it's gone to India, it's gone to England, it's gone to Ireland, it is in Ireland, it has been left there. And interestingly, there's another big gold box that isn't lead-lined, that doesn't hold anything anymore, that's still stuck over in the Israel area. So when they find the Ark of the Covenant, they're not going to find the one that has the tools. Now, when the Ark of the Covenant tools came in to the Exodus, was the fact that Moses was one of the hybrids that were connected to the Palladian nibiruian races, the Samjazi, Luciferian nibiruian races. Galactic Federation approached him and approached him on the mountain and gave him commandments to do. Actually, there were tablets at one point, but they weren't the commandments. The tablets weren't, the stone tablets weren't the commandments, they were the laws that were to be held in the Temple of Solomon, because that was their temple. The whole Hebrew religion has been twisted by making it look like the Midianite takeover crew were the Hebrews, and they weren't. But what happened, interestingly, is Galactic Federation got hold of the box, and they managed to get the rod and the staff temporarily. But they had to keep it on planet, because if you take it off planet, it recodes it, and it won't work on the gates here anymore. You have to keep it in density 1, as close to Earth's fields as possible if you're going to take it anywhere off planet. That's why, if it had been easy enough to just take the darn thing, get them off planet until they were needed, they would have done it. But it would have neutralized them, they wouldn't be able to be used. They had to start over, get a new set of them, and you can't keep doing this. Plus, we were supposed to have open access to inner Earth. The Magi had to have access to inner Earth because they were helping to run the crystal pylon temples. What happened in the Exodus story was all these big promises were made by Galactic Federation to the person who was called Musa. He came down as Moses in the translations. And he was given not the staff, but the rod, which is smaller and not quite as powerful. This is what was used to create the writing. It was a photoradionic transmission. Actually, that one was photosonic, which means it uses light rather than sound waves. The rod, I believe, was a photoradionic. No. It was used to carve the laws, the tablets of laws, and there were quite a few of them. There weren't just two, there were a whole bunch of them. These were to be on display. These were to be to intimidate the people. And Moses was allowed to keep the rod temporarily, because he had a job to do. He had to free the people. He had to free the Midianite Hyksos people that got stuck in Egypt after they tried to take over, did for a while, and then they got beat again. They were being used as slaves, poor babies. They had done the same thing to the Egyptians. But the Exodus happened. You know that parting the Red Sea, God parted the Red Sea. God didn't part the Red Sea. Moses parted the Red Sea with the weapon. He used the rod to generate the photosonic beam. You can part a sea with this thing, as long as you hold it very steady. Right? A little help from above. The few little spaceships they managed to leave out of the story. That's how they got the Hyksos people out and over to Israel, into that area, to near the Sinai. Now, what was a real bummer for them was, even though our guys, at this point, our rail lines in Egypt, which were called the Saras Egyptians, either had been contaminated with interbreeding with them, or they'd been completely taken over. There was a few of the Magi lines left that were wandering, like in the desert, just trying to stay away from everybody, because everybody's trying to get them, right? Well, they got wind of what was going on. And there was this big raid staged at the Temple of Solomon where we took back the box. And we got it over to Hatshepsut's temple, where at least we were able to recode it. So you couldn't open it unless you had the frequency seals, the commandments. So the commandments on the box were interesting. They were frequency, tone commands that you had to know, and you had to be able to carry the frequency of. To be able, and you had to do a sequence. There were 12 tones, not 10, 12, that had to be commanded to get into that box without it blowing up in your face and frying you if you tried to touch it, because it had the seals put on it. It had photoelectric seals put on it. That anybody that wasn't coded, this is after it got stolen enough times, all right, already sealed the darn thing. So only the Magi, supposedly, were able to get into the box. So people are stealing the box, but they're having a hell of a time getting in the box to get to the tools. Galactic Federation helped out with that thanks to Enoch. Because at the time, Enoch decoded 10 out of the 12 commands. And Galactic Federation held the other 2. They figured out what they were. This is when Enoch wrote the Enochian Watchtowers. That's when he was running the Jehovian agenda. And he actually gave it to somebody else to counteract what the Hyksos were doing. But the Hyksos got a hold of it. So they were able. This is how they were able to get the realm staff out of the box. So once we made the grand effort and actually succeeded in getting the box back and getting it temporarily to Hatshepsut's temple in Egypt, and her brother Moses III, who was like across the river, and he ended up grabbing the box. However, we recoded it. Within a year, the box left Hatshepsut, and her brother stole it, her half-brother stole it. He was in the draft agenda. She wasn't. They were very interesting family lines there were in those days. They were a half-sister and a half-brother. He was a draft agenda. He was a draft hybrid, but she wasn't. Okay, so he was like half Magi and half draft, is what Tutmosis III was. This was the guy that the Exodus took place under. And I have the dates and everything. There's so many of the dates with this. I have them on a list home, and they'll be integrated into the new book that's coming, but I don't have them off the top of my head. But you can look them up. They're the historical dates, relatively close to the historical dates assigned to those pharaohs. Well, at Hatshepsut's temple, we did manage to get a new set of seals put on it. So the old textbooks, Enochian Watchtowers didn't work anymore. The 10 Commandments didn't work anymore. Okay. 12, actually. The 10. Only 10 of the commandments were allowed to be among human populations. The Galactic Federation held the final 2. That was their trump card. Where, okay, they could get their hybrid race or somebody here to use the others, but they weren't about to hand over the full power of the 12 commandments. They would only open the ark with their permission, with their control. Well, it was a real big disappointment to the Galactic Federation people when our guys got the box back and recoded it. The whole Christ mission was part of this. There's a lot to the Jesus mission. It started quite a bit before Jesus. Now, the Jesus mission, one of the main things wasn't to come back and let everybody know that, hi, I'm the Son of God, I'm better than you, but there is a heaven waiting if you're really, really good. This was not what Jesus did. This is not what he came for. It's not what he taught. He taught the teachings of the Inner Christos. He came back with the two others, his half-sister Miriam, who is me, and I know that. And I don't have to fight with anybody about it. And I prove it, I don't know, in about 8 years or so, and see what pops up in the ground and I deal with it. No promises, but they tell me I won't. But John the Baptist was the other one. He actually came in first. He was quite a bit older than he's depicted in the stories. He wasn't, they were not, the mothers of Jesus and John were not pregnant at the same time. The story was totally twisted and altered to hide the identity of who John the Baptist was, partially. And anyway, the mission that they had was, first of all, they were the 3 CD plate speakers for that time. They were to bring the true data back from the plates, the true history, the roundtables, all of that, to bring it back. And they had a mission. What they were pretending to do was take that out in preparation for the 2017 star activation cycle, before it got any worse, before they contaminated any more of the races, and before the DNA twist went any further than it did. What they needed to do to accomplish that was they needed to generate enough power. They needed to get the Ark of the Covenant with the rod and the staff in it up to Q-site 11. They needed to then get to a place that used to be in Lemuria, that's now in Hawaii, because that was part of what Lemuria was, where they could open the halls of Emerita Passage. They were able to accomplish part of this mission. They managed to get control of the Ark box. However, it was missing one of the pieces. It was missing the staff. They had it when they got it, and they got raided by the Hyksos. And the Hyksos managed to, Joshua had the box open, and we got raided because they had been watching us. We thought we were in a secured location at Saqqara, Egypt. And they had raided it, and they didn't get the box or the rod, but they got the staff, which was the more powerful one. So, we couldn't do anything for the rest of that mission. We couldn't fulfill the rest of that mission because you needed the rod and the staff to generate enough power and the halls of Emerita open. We didn't bother opening the halls of Emerita then, because it wouldn't have been enough on its own. You needed those two instruments together to generate the power base. So, it was passed on to another set of generations. And meanwhile, there was the reclaim the staff problem happening. But what John and Miriam and Joshua were able to do, Joshua didn't go on this trip, but he was part of, it was all our mission. What we managed to do was get the box through a stargate that is at Tel El Amarna, which is where Pharaoh Akhenaten had moved his capital in East Pharaoh. He moved it there because there was a big portal system there, an opening one to inner earth and to a couple other places. One of those places was into Atlantis, the part now known as England. We were able to get through that portal the Ark box with the rod in it over to England, and it was buried there for quite a while. Nobody could figure out where the heck it was, because everybody was looking for it at that point. They wanted to get the other half, right? Try to get that rod out of the box. So it was safer to get it back to Atlantis or England, and we managed to do that, and it was buried there. There were several other attempts to bring others in to fix it and to finish the mission. They didn't work. Joshua ascended right after the mission fell apart. He didn't get crucified. He didn't die. He knew he couldn't do it anymore. And John was captured and killed in the John the Baptist story. And I drifted around for a while and left a child named David behind and a child named Jeremiah. And then left two, but I left Swift's mention as well. I didn't die body that time. I took the way up that Joshua did. Unfortunately, John wasn't able to do that because they killed him before he was able to. So, it was a sad ending to a sad story. But then the next attempt that comes down in our history was during what they call the Arthur period. And I believe it was 609 AD was when he was killed. I have these exact dates too, but I'm trying to remember all of them. It was somewhere around 559 AD, I believe Arthur was born. So that story started there. There was a big, I have to make sure on those dates now. Okay, it's right in that time frame. It was like 550 something to 6 something AD. All right, and I have the exact ones in the writings. The objective of this, now, the Magi lines, Arthur was a Magi line, Guinevere was a Magi line. Merlin was not a Magi line, he was half Magi, and he was half of the super race of Galactic Federation fame. He was half of the hybrid Anunnaki race, but he had entered the Emerald Covenant, so he was supposed to help. One of the first things that needed to be done was reclaiming the staff, and he did help in reclaiming the staff from the Hyksos generations who would have been passed down through. He couldn't use the staff because he didn't have the coating. Now the staff is interesting. You know the stories of Excalibur the sword? Well, there's a few people who could use the staff, and it was very, very useful for all sorts of things, but it was very hard to hold for long periods of time, not to mention hide. So there was a sword manufactured that in its handle, the staff was. The only ones who could activate it were the ones who had the DNA codes that could run enough frequency to trigger its activation. Arthur was able to do that. So was Guinevere. Scared that heck out of Merlin, too. Merlin used to have training schools, mystical training schools, in Ireland and in England. But one of the greatest ones was in Ireland, because we spent time here. Camelot was actually more here. This was the location of where Camelot was supposed to be. It was not in England. England was where we were holed up for a while, doing the Guardian stuff on Gate 11. Then we were to get the staff box. It was buried there up to Q-Site 11, Ireland, and that's where we were to build Camelot. We never got to fulfill that vision because Merlin turned traitor. He was very tortured. He wasn't a mean person. He was just mixed up, and I never saw anybody play both sides against the middle like this person. He made deals here, he made deals here, he made himself all confused. And he had some degree of power, but not a whole lot. He had some degree because of his Magi codes, but he could do certain little trickster things. He could be a wizard, but not a very high-level wizard. He could behave himself, he would have been a great wizard. He would have been a Christos wizard. But the way that story ended is a long story. Who was who. There were a couple of Knights of the Round Table left by the time we got up to Ireland. For a while that was going really good. We had Anunnaki and Drax of all sorts in their hybrid forms, chasing everything around, trying to get a hold of the gold box. They knew it was in England somewhere. They didn't know where it was. They had to wait till we got it out so they could find it. There's a quest for the Holy Grail, which was they control the box, they control the planetary shields, they control the Gruul point, the Holy Grail. We were successful in getting the box up from England to Ireland. There was a procession through which that was done. At this point, there was a group that became historically known as the Knights Templar, who were hell-bent on assassinating Arthur. And Merlin had given them information where they could find him in us. It was really interesting because I have one scene that I still remember vividly now from the memory of moving the art box. It was like a caravan, a small caravan of who was left of the Arthurian court that had fallen apart because they were constantly being infiltrated by knights that said they were knights that were loyal to the Emerald Covenant and the Knights. And most of them usually weren't because they were sent in by the Knights Templar and other Anunnaki-based groups. For a while we had it going good. The original Knights of the Round Table, they were the ones who held the Round Table knowledge. The knowledge that Jeshua had brought in and John had brought in on how to run the Merkaba in order to get the planetary shields back. They had the knowledge of the mission and the maps and keys, which is what this stuff is drawn from. It's called the Books of Maps and Keys. That was one of Jeshua's books. By the time, it became very apparent that certain things were not going well. First of all, Arthur ended up married to the wrong person because it was set up by the Knights Templar and by Merlin, who said, oh, this is the person. Merlin was older than Arthur. It wasn't as if they were contemporaries. Merlin, in fact, was around when Arthur's real twin was born. His, what they call kind of his soul twin, but it's like on a much higher level, where they were going to run the codes together. You know, it was like a prearranged marriage before you're born kind of thing. Well, Merlin made sure that the wrong person ended up married to him. Arthur trusted Merlin tremendously. Arthur didn't realize for a long time. So after a while it became apparent that something was wrong. First of all, they weren't getting along very well. It was part of the problem. He married the twin of the person who was his twin. She was born as two. But it wasn't the same soul in the twin bodies at all. One was affiliated with the Anunnaki matrix and was plugged into that agenda. And that's the one Arthur was set up to marry by Merlin. The other twin, Merlin had told the mother and the father of the twins when they were born, one is evil and one is good. And he pointed out the good one is the evil one, and said have it destroyed. But the father of the children, the mother was on her deathbed, she was dying, and giving birth to the twins. The father had a soft spot in his heart for the one that was pointed out as the evil one. So he didn't kill it. He sent it away to England to live among poor families. Somebody would take it in and he would pay them secretly. So at least it was alive. Well, that little trick came back to haunt a bunch of them. She was named, actually her name was Guinevere. That was the name, the signature she was supposed to carry, the frequency signature. But the other one became called Guinevere. And the twin was called Saline. And Saline was raised poor. She was raised poor in S-E-A-L-E-A-N, I believe. It had a funny spelling. It wasn't like Celine, it was Saline. Interestingly, as fate has it, because there's always guardians that work somewhere trying to fix things when they go wrong. Merlin found out that that one was still alive, so he kept his eye on her, and he knew what she was. He knew she had the coding that could hold the staff. He knew she could activate, too. Activate the sword, too. That meant, well, she was like, I need to control this commodity. But he liked her. He didn't want to kill her. This had potential. Because he was very lonesome. He had enough power over himself that would get, get really bored with average people who were going to play games with him. So he figured if he could get her young enough and train her really well, brainwash her into doing things the way he did, that he'd have a really nice companion and he could grow himself a wife. And they could do nasty little metaphysics together whenever he chose. So he kidnapped her. And he took her into, he had certain access to inner earth portals because he was working with some of the anima Kismet Anunnaki hybrid races there. And he took her in there and he started training her from the time she was 7. Good mistake, Merlin. Because he began progressively, she looked at him as a father for a while. And he didn't pretend he was a father, he said he was an uncle that had been sent by very special people in the universe to come and teach her because she was special. Okay, so she bought it, and she learned how to use her powers. She had quite a bit of powers in those days, not one I have now. The powers were the ability to influence the grids, primarily, but to run frequency, which you could play little games with that. You could learn to levitate things if you really tried and those kind of things. Well, Merlin brought her back to the mystical school that he was setting up in the Arthurian court. There's a bunch of the knights that were trained there. She was the only woman who was permitted. Of course, it was his school, so if he wanted to actually do that. Well, she grew up to be around 15, and at this point, he was very interested in the wife concept, and she was just very much in love with Arthur. She didn't get to spend much time with him, but she just knew that that was the person who was her twin. She never said anything about it. Meanwhile, twin sister Celine, who looked very similar, but had different hair color. Okay, Celine had, or the one that was the real Guinevere had like a reddish blonde hair. Because she really got more of like the Celtic genes. She was Celtic. She was Irish. They were both Irish. But the other one had black hair, like almost black, like a dark brown hair. The one that was married to Arthur first. So it was kind of interesting because when Arthur discovered he started to get visions that were given to him by the guardians to show him that Merlin had betrayed him before he trusted him any further. And it was shown that he had mismatched the marriage. And when he found out, his wife was going to get sent to the convent. Because she was no longer going to be living in the castle. And interestingly, it was more of the hand of fate that brought Celine and Arthur together. Arthur was very sick and very despondent after finding out he had been so betrayed. Merlin was still there. He didn't turn on him because they had very close friends, but he just couldn't believe that he had done what he had done and had passed on secrets to the Knights Templar and all sorts of things. Celine and Arthur ended up getting together and lived in the same complex at this point. She had been part of Merlin's school, and there was a different section of the, I call it castle, but it wasn't like the big, pretty fancy castles that you imagine. It wasn't. It was a stone edifice that had numerous compartments to it. And most of them were transient ones. There was no time to set up a big, fancy, this was not an establishment thing. There were little holdouts here, and then we move again, and there were little holdouts there. The main destination was to go to Ireland. Ireland on the island of what's now called Ireland. Because that is where the Q site 11 is. That's where the ark had to be put to finish the rest of the mission. Celine and Arthur got together. At this point, it was really sad because Merlin was pathetically in love with her. And when she started to realize, she was getting her visions too. When she started to realize what he had done, Arthur, and she had already fallen in love with Arthur, even though she never had contact with him. She just turned on Merlin and said, "Excuse me?" I don't think so. And she was going to leave, and she was going to tell Arthur. And for a while, Merlin was trying to keep them apart and kind of keep her prisoner, but then he kind of gave up because he knew it wasn't going to work. So he decided he wanted to be good again. He just said, "Okay, I'm really sorry. I got really messed up, and that kind of stuff." So he was going to be Arthur's friend again. He was going to be helping us all again. And he arranged for Arthur and Celine to come back together so they would know what, they would be brought together so they could run frequency. And they were supposed to bring a child in. The child was supposed to be the one that would carry on the mission. The child was supposed to be the King of Camelot. It was supposed to be the community that was set up after the Nibiruian grid was taken down. The new world, the free world. Celine conceived the child. And while she was pregnant, she was having kind of typical icky pregnant feelings. And Merlin, so helpful that he is, put him right over the edge when she conceived the child of Arthur, because he had wanted her for his own and he raised her since she was 7 to be his. You could say in a moment of insanity, but he did call his life a moment of insanity. He administered a certain type of concoction to help her feel better that contained certain levels of mercury. She, within a few days afterward, miscarried the child. What he had planned on was she ended up bleeding to death. Arthur was totally devastated, and then the Knights Templar attacked. He was wounded in battle. He wasn't killed. Now, the sequence of this, she didn't bleed to death instantly. She got a mercury poisoning herself. When she miscarried the child, she bled. Finally, they could stop it. They were giving herbals and all sorts of things. But she was very, very, very sick and very close to death for quite a few months. Meanwhile, the Knights Templar attacked. Arthur managed to, with a few remaining knights, such as Percival, who was his closest, they managed to hold back the Knights Templar. And the big thing was they had to get the box. They had Excalibur, they had the sword, they had the staff. The rod was in the box. They had to get the rod and the staff together. They could open the box. They had the keys, the commands, the tomes. But they had to get it up to Ireland. So there was this amazing thing that took place, and I remember seeing images of this in some of my own related incarnational memory. You had Knights Templar people closing in all around. You had lots of peasant people around that knew, because they were Magi, they were indigos. They knew what Arthur was really, the name was Guinevere, but they switched the names when they switched the identities. They knew what they were and what they had come for. So the peasants put their life on the line. And they lined up. It was almost like Hands Across America, the thing they'd done recently. They lined up in all the little coves and little villages to mark the way so they could make it up green with iron. They did it knowing they would be killed. Their villages would be raided and they would be tortured and killed for showing a stand of loyalty. But they held back the Knights Templars that were trying to kill Arthur and Guinevere, who was, both of them, he was injured and, still having battle wounds, and she was basically in a kind of stretcher paradigm kind of thing, still having periodic bleeding and having, she was dying. They made it. They got to Island of Eye. There was more land sticking out of it then. It wasn't as, the water didn't come up as far as it does now. And they managed to get, first of all, and Arthur managed to get the ark buried there. Guinevere died, slain Guinevere died, which Arthur was extremely despondent at that point. Because he found his twin, and the only thing that ever meant anything to him was his twin and the mission. And neither of them, she was gone, and the mission couldn't be finalized because they needed both of them to run the frequency. They had to be together to run the frequency that would allow the Kundera to come in strong enough. Arthur died shortly after from the battle that he had from the fights down in England. And Percival had gone off to do something. I forget what it was in the records, but he never returned because he was set up. Kind of like a snare, and they got him. And Arthur died in Ireland. And there was a group of Magi, of Celtic descent, that knew who he was. And they were not about to let the guy, the Templars, get a hold of his body. So they buried him with the ark, or near the ark of the covenant. And they buried him in a way, because they knew in the future things would come out. They buried him in a way that they would hope it would preserve enough, because they buried him with some evidence. They would not only prove that Arthur was there, but they buried him with some of the Christ books, the original copies, and a few relics of this or that sort. They buried him in a way that had what's called a photoradionic seal, which allows preservation to some degree. And they're not always infallible. Nobody knows what it's going to look like when they dig it out. But certain things don't leave holes. Gold tends to stick around. So there was a few things in gold with some interesting information on them that were left in. That is also out by the Island of Eye, Arthur's actual grave. There was a false burial staged down in his England, because he was born in England. So they made it look like it was down there because they knew there would be rape robbers looking for it, trying to get at it. Because if nothing else, he had codes. And what they wanted to find out, if there is a certain dust that appears on the body if a person undergoes even partial cellular transmutation, the stuff is called celestaline. Recently, the fake version of it's called white powder gold. Ancient substance, but the real stuff, is a chemical that the body secretes right before it does atomic transmutation. Or, if the whole body doesn't go, but the soul gets to transmute out of density 1, it will release a bit of this chemical, and as soon as it hits the air, it dries to a very thin powder. The chemical is actually an element. It's what's called a transient element. It has extremely short lifetime. But its residue, which is the celestaline powder, will be left on the skin. So he was very valuable because he had the codes, the Gate 12 codes. So if anybody was going to have this stuff could be used. It could be ingested to give temporary access to gates. Very temporary. So they buried him in Ireland because that's where his heart was, and that's where he wanted to live, and that's where he and Guinevere were supposed to bring their child. They were supposed to do Camelot. Camelot never got to be done. But the whole story got hijacked by the Anunnaki, where Merlin became the great wizard, and Arthur was tolerated. Pretty nice guy. Yes, I have to like Arthur. And the whole characters were transposed, were the ones that were highlighted, like, what's his name? The one that sister. That guy, he was like Anunnaki Central. He was a Knights Templar that was sent in. You know, and he's glorified as the wonderful, she just couldn't resist him because he's such a wonderful, noble knight, white. You know, they have twisted these stories and these histories so badly. And this wasn't the first time. This has been going on since Atlantis. Let me show you where I'm talking about when I'm talking about Atlantis. Let's put the big one that shows the continent first. No, the other one. Yeah, this one. First we'll show this one. This is where Atlantis was before it had a little problem. Blowing up its grids. Okay. See this thing here that's kind of shaped like a water turtle? Its head up here, its little shell here, its little tail here, and its little fin coming down its flipper. That was a continent. It was a continent that had numerous large, like interior seas, but it was still a full continent. Look up here. England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, they're all part of it. Down here at the tail, then this whole region was part of it too. There was actually a land bridge that linked Florida into this part. Florida was the grew-off point right over here that held the central control point for the shields. So all of this activity was happening here. The reason so much got concentrated up here is there was a progressive rating from about 10,500 BC, a progressive rating of the Atlantean territories. Now, in 10,500 BC, it didn't look like this. By then, it had already been halfway blown apart. Put the other graph up, please. What happened in 28,000 BC is there was an attempt to take over the planetary grids, to take over Giza, actually, because that's where Gate 4 comes down. And at the time, guess what was there? Ark of the Covenant. Now, the real Ark of the Covenant, by the way, is a portal passage that goes from Giza to Andromeda. But the box ended up being called the Ark of the Covenant because the tools that were on the staff were charged with the frequency that was emanating from that portal. That's how they were created. So it's kind of funny. You have the real Ark of the Covenant, you have that Ark of the Covenant box. That story's in Voyager Secrets of the Midnight. Okay. This is what was left of the Atlantean continent by the time. So what they did is they used the grew-off point and they sent a photosonic beam through the ley lines that went through here. And they were aiming for here. But what it did was intercept and go this way on several things instead. Because it hit a seal that was on the Ark of the Covenant portal passage that was over in Giza, which they hadn't calculated. And it backed through the pulse that they sent. And the pulse went this way, and this way, and went all the way up through the grids. And it literally cracked the place all over the place. Then there were a few other places that have some very interesting verification records that were purposely taken down by using photosonics to literally hit the mantle, the Earth's mantle underneath them, to make them drop. These were lands that were taken over by Anunnaki, and then certain things buried there for their use later, after they came back to take the grids. That's why they're all into this Atlantis rising stuff. Yeah, they kind of bring it up all right. But these are the areas that remain. This is Bermuda area. This is from Florida down into Central America down in there. And over, I think it was Cuba and those kind of things over in there. I have to look at these guys. But this was the main control point right here, where it goes into the Gulf of Mexico. It's about a quarter mile off the coast of Siesta Key Beach, which is in Sarasota, Florida. Some of the most important sites are that one, England and Ireland, and France and Kauai. They're the most important points as far as running this Templar. So I just wanted to see when I'm talking about Atlantis and things like that, where it is. Now, over here, these are what remains of the Lemurian continent. Okay, that continent used to be, let's just gotta come back up and say, really quick. This used to be what became known as the Lemurian Empire. It was actually the Mua Empire, the Mua race. All right. This is where a lot of it started, and this ended up getting blown up in 50,000 BC because they were trying to stop railway groups from activating the halls of Amarea which was the frequency that was needed to bring through that Stargate 3, 6, 9, 12 connection to override the nibiruian thing. So they ended up blowing up the continent again with the photosonics. The Jehovian Anunnaki did that, the Sirius A Dolphin people and their hybrids here. So this is the story of our history, whether we want to accept it or believe it or not. Someday we'll prove out that there will be records that will be sent to verify. But right now, we're not concerned about verifying. The job of the Guardians was, we promised to not abandon the human races. They promised to bring the truth back. But they can't make a person believe the truth. They're fulfilling their end of the deal and presenting it. What people do with that is their choice. Okay, now, I'm going to take a diversion from history and stuff for a while and get back into the solution. The solutions which come down to Merkaba. This is so we get to stretch and not get glued to our seats again for too long. Yes?
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
That time of Arthur.
Somebody important back there and in the future. It doesn't matter who I was. I'll tell you honestly if I know who I was in a certain time frame. Since you asked, I will say it. I mean, there's some people who know already. I was the sister Celine that had been switched. I knew her own personally, and I know him this time around too. I met in England the last time I was here. Surprise, surprise, hello. You were him. How much of the story am I allowed to tell? Okay. Anyway. So when I talk about parts of this history, the parts I talk best about are the ones I know from directly, he says there. Alright. That I don't like to use that, and I feel really exposed when I talk about my personal incarnational stuff. But if it matters, and it mattered to you, and this group I felt safe enough with that with, it's enough to know, it's hard enough for me to talk about Miriam. Well, excuse me, oh no, this is house sister. You know, that was hard. That was released in the New York City group, and it was a real hard step for me. It's not something that I care to have promoted. It's not something that I use to carry the work. The work can stand on its own. It doesn't need a hokey reference, because that's what it would appear as to other people out there in the New Age movement. So I prefer that it be kept between us. Yeah, it's up to you. I'm not going to get mad or anything if it gets out. But I would prefer that to just be taken as it was given, which was a little more information. There seemed to be a curiosity about it, and it's a trust. It doesn't matter much, really. But for now, it might, at least as far as personal exposure goes. Anyway, the solutions to all of this are, first of all, and this is the hardest one, knowing who your friends are in this game. Because there's a strategy that human militaries inherited from Anunnaki, which is basically keep your friends close and your enemies closer. They try to be our best buddies. They try to infiltrate people that are closest to us, particularly indigos, because indigos are just such valuable little torches that you can get their frequencies running in reverse. Nobody is going to be able to do that for you. I'm not going to be able to, give you a list of 100 people and I'll tell you which ones are your friends. I'm not going to do that. It's not going to work that way. What's going to work is developing your own differentiation skills. And also realizing that if there's people here, in people bodies, just like you have a people body, if they're running one of those agendas, 99% of them have no idea what they're attached to. They're not doing it on purpose. They get impulsed to do things, and they get thoughts sent down through their heads, and emotions sent up through intuitive facilities to direct them. Only when necessary. The rest of the time, they're regular. They're just people. They don't realize they're in danger, but they tend to get very, very protective of either a Toth groupie or a Jehovian groupie. They tend to become groupies. They act like sheep. They don't want to know about stuff that empowers them. They're more interested in having somebody to follow and having somebody to fix it for them. This is how you can usually tell the difference between a Magi and a regular human soul incarnate in a human body and ones that are either an Anunnaki or a dragon incarnate in a human body. They feel more secure with having authority. They like to be sheep, so there's a shepherd, which makes them really vulnerable to being misdirected. Humans can fall into that trap too regularly, human incarnates. Aside from the challenge of not knowing who your friends are. You have a tool, first of all. You can interact with anyone. You can talk to anyone telepathically if you want to. We teach don't channel. You don't need to channel. You can do telepathic communication with anything in the universe if you want to, but it doesn't come into your field and into your DNA, so it doesn't contaminate you. If you put up your Mahara seal, that D12 frequency will protect you from having your fields invaded. So nobody's saying you can't have your interdimensional communications and you can't have your higher vision and all that. You can't have all those things. If you do it through the Mahara, the frequency of the Mahara shield, you'll be able to do it safely. You'll be able to be with people, regardless of whether they have field attachments, relatively safely, as long as you're using your Mahara seal. You don't have to run away from everybody because they might be, have their fields contaminated. You might be able to help them just by being near them. Love them. They need it. They need healing. Especially the ones that don't even realize they need healing. What the solution to the big problem is, which is that, we can take that down now, which is the grid. The Nibiruian grid is called the Nibiruian Dyadic Crystal Grid, is the official name of it. The solution to that is simple. That's been the whole problem all along. They've gone through such huge efforts to hide everything. Because the solutions are not that difficult. If you could get the right elements at the right place, at the right time to do the right thing. Okay? The elements were the Ark of the Covenant with the rod and the staff in it, secured under proper D12 coating. You needed to get enough people to carry the indigo coating, the Maji coating, that could run the Kirashe and Kundere, which implied planetary grids to fully disengage that Nibiruian crystal grid. You had to be able to run D12 current through here. And the grids have been on since 208,216 BC. They've been on 10 code. There's one way to get the grids into a 12 code pulse, and that was to anchor the stellar bridge on a 12 code by holding enough extra frequency on the planet to allow that to happen. The indigos did that in January of 2000. So once the grids are activated on 12 code, the other elements, rod and staff box, that had to be IQ side 11, Ireland. You needed to do a round table. First you had to open the halls of Amaray, which are the ones that come down in Kauai, that allows an extremely strong beam of Maharata frequency to run down. And it allows gate 6 frequency to run down, so when you release that thing, it will catch the Merkaba of the planet and ever so gently bring it back into alignment so the place doesn't roll by clearing it. After the halls of Amaray are open, then you need to go to gate 11. And you have to have already there, in the exact right location, which it is, the rod and the staff box. And then you have to have Maji come and do a round table the right way and run frequency into that box to activate the rod and the staff. And then you transmit that frequency down into Q-Side 11, where you make a connection between the round table people and Crystal Pylon Temple 11 of Inner Earth, which gives you enough power to draw down from the halls of Amaray, from Kauai, where they come in, the D12 frequency. And once it's drawn down that far, it's built up through Crystal Pylon Temple. This is why I say the roots are going to be activating. Oh boy, was that an understatement. This is the place where the energy has to be compounded and held in order to generate enough frequency to when it's dragged through the location of the Nibiruian Dyadic crystal grid, it has enough thrust to do critical mass override to shut the grid down. So the grids are going to be getting very, very hot here, let's say. They're going to be very active. And it's going to be really jumpy energy for some people. There's a lot of efforts to try to stabilize it. So it's not, they didn't say there's going to be any, you're not going to get any quaking or anything like that. It's not that severe. But it's going to be enough to be fatiguing to the physical body if you're not working with the DNA. The people who live in Ireland can help everybody here by simply working with their own DNA and working with their own Merkaba, because it'll help stabilize this energy in the race field here. So you'll be able to help it not affect people, negatively. Once this energy builds, which will take a few days after it's activated, then we're going to go to gate 11 site in England. And that's where the round table is going to draw frequency. And it's going to pull the the Roundtable people itself are going to be the force that pulls the frequency, while the Crystal Pylon Temple at Gate 11, or Templar Site 11, QSAT 11, pushes the energy. We're going to receive it and pull it and anchor it into Stargate 11. And in so doing, it is going to flip over to a D12, not reverse code, the electromagnetic program that's running through the program at the nibiruian crystal grid at Stonehenge. What that's going to do is going to sever the link, first of all, between this planet and parallel Earth, the artificial link that's being created, which gives this planet a chance to get out from under pole shift, because parallel Earth is going, it's rolling. They've hit 2008 in their timeline. There, the 2003 dimensional blend experiment went down. There, they went under frequency fence mind control. They've been evacuating them out. A lot of them have just been dying in mass to get their consciousness out so they could blend with their doubles over here if this place would get set free. Because if they get trapped, we get trapped. If you have a double there that gets trapped, you're not going to be able to do transmutation. You're going to have to reincarnate again in density 1. So there's been a big effort to evac, if we can't get them out in body, get them out in consciousness to inner Earth. A lot of our parallel cells have been brought to inner Earth, either in their physical form if they can go through, or as consciousness, where they are literally waiting as souls to link with us progressively through the natural process we would go through transmutation, where we link with link with the rest of ourselves. So there's a lot going on, but the fireworks start to fly during these 2 trips, because this is where, for the first time, since the Dark Room was set up in 25,500 BC, we have the power, we have enough people, we have the knowledge, we have the right and staff in the right place. Finally, that's been a big one. Trying to get those 2 little objects together in the box, in the right place, where nobody would read it, has been a major project. Most of history has been about people chasing each other around trying to get it back. This is the first time we've had the conditions that we can do this without them being able to do anything drastic to stop us. And they know we're going to try. They have a few things in mind. First of all, they underestimate. That's one of the biggest things. When you have a big ego, you tend to underestimate other people's capacities. They do not believe there will be enough of us. First of all, there won't be enough time. Because even if we get this grid unplugged, and even if they get the grid stabilized through Stargate 6, they still have their 23 other temples running the program. That will be enough to keep the reversal in the grids to give them access in 2003. So, of course, all of those temples have to be recoded. Those areas, those 24 temples, not just the one here. We have to progressively go, but we don't have to go to each site. Some of them are linked in a way that you can go to one and take out 3 and recode them to the D12 imprint. What's nice is if we get them all recoded, they start to help us. They're not negative places anymore. They're places that will actually help anchor and transmit all through that dark grid that we saw before. The nibiruian 8-way star will start to turn white. It will be transmitting Mahara current. But it doesn't leave us much time, and this is the element that they figure they're not worried about. To get enough people together at the right places, to convince enough people that this is, this material is legitimate, where they actually take action and do something. To get enough people working with their Merkabahs to get it on the right spin, to get all this done, and all these sites done, before the end of 2002. They don't think we can do it. I think we can. Guardians think we can, or wouldn't we bother trying? We can. If there's enough of us that care. One of the big things I can tell, if they're going to try to throw a cog in our plan, is try to assault the material. Try to do whatever they can. I can imagine what they're going to come up with, just from seeing what they came up with before, to get people to turn against the work where they wouldn't read the work and stuff. This ought to be real good. They're going to get the real big labels out to throw at me now. You know what they used to do in the ancient days? They come in, take over your temple, kill all of your spiritual people, and then put their own in and appoint themselves under the same name, as if they were still you, because certain groups have trusted you. And they would go in and they would start running bad creed, and they would start twisting the creeds under your name. So God knows what they're going to try to do with this information. Or, I'm so used to them trying to slander my reputation, and it uses me at this point. They can't do anything to me directly. They need security codes to the grids that they carry. And it's going to be a while before they can be put in the grids. That keeps me alive and breathing and safe. That keeps all of you safe. You're needed for the security codes. The indigos are the high council people that carry the last codes to be put into the grids. First, the humans have to drop their codes. That's why people have been being guided to sacred sites for the last 20 years to start downloading their codes on the reverse matrix. We have some protection because we don't have to drop our codes. You know, a little bit here, a little bit there, but the big finale is when calls implementate open. They're not supposed to open until 2012. That may be expedited until up to 2008, I'm not sure, depending on how this goes, because they have to open gate 6 faster. So they have to keep us around even though they don't want us around. There's a security factor in that, a safety factor for us. There's also a whole lot of protection. But if you're indigo and you've been drawn to one of these lectures, you still have a choice. You could still decide to go for an agenda. That isn't the Emerald Covenant agenda. That's your choice. You do have protection if you follow this agenda. And you probably get some protection from the others who'd rather use you. They don't care, but they want to use you. And the protection from them too, as long as you're useful and valuable. The thing with us is, you're always useful and valuable because you are. Because you're walking. Okay. Okay. All right, this is good. Okay. Since we're going to go from here into Roundtable, what Michael's suggesting is a good suggestion. We're going to get you into not an assigned position right now, because later we'll decide who's going to be in position 1 and 2. We're not worrying about the numbers right now, and right now because of the way of the grids, the room, we couldn't exactly get the Roundtable the full way it was supposed to. It should have run this way, but it's okay this way for what we're doing. Now, 3 people go in each circle. So if you can, yeah. And ideally, it shouldn't be 3 of the same gender. It should be like 2 male, 1 female, 2 female, 1 male, to be honest with polarities. So you gotta pick. There's 3 people go with each circle, including the middle ones. Okay, you don't have to stand in the circle. You can stand around the circle. Okay, or you'll all be stepping all over each other in the middle of the circle. Okay. You don't have to put your symbols anymore, just so you know. You don't have to use those. You already put them in your body. So you can put your symbols away, you know. Oh, okay. Well, okay. Some people, if they know to go to the laboratory, somebody just said they have to go a real quick run. You have to go. Okay. We won't start the spins until. So exercises here, these are really part of each other. They were first trained with the salutations, and then that was one part. Once you do that by itself, which is in the technique that's in your field guide. But when you run the roundtables, you do the salutation, but you add it to other stuff. And that's what we're going to start with that. And you're going to read the salutations and then come back to the roundtable like that. Yeah. So you're going to get both. But we decided to keep you in the basic positions. Now tomorrow, when we get into running a more tight roundtable, this is just to give you an idea of what it's going to be like to do a roundtable. There will be 12 positions. There will be 3 positions, 3 people assigned to each position. Each position represents a tribe. So each position will sing the tones that go with the tribe it gets assigned. And we'll have our field guides with us when we do stuff like this, so we can look at what was tribe for. So, alright, so you know what the songs were that go with that particular tribe. When we're running around, what we do is we literally get the whole 12-tribe song going. Alright, which sounds really cool when you get it going. Now, when we're doing it tonight, we're only going to use the 2 of them, the Araya Zerturat and the Zertu which is tribe 1 and 12, which gives you the 13. So it contains the basic frequencies of all of the rest, but when you want to get those specific frequencies amplified, that's when you use each of the different 12 songs. That's why they're given to us. That's why the 12 tribes' names were changed long ago in the records, because they gave us power to access the grid. So Michael's going to take it from here. You're going to We're going to start with the activating tribal shield, and we're going to do the tones. Okay, so I will take it from here.
Alright, your shields are up. That's fine, but I want you to feel like they are. Okay, so just close your eyes, settle down, shut up, please, concentrate. Alright, let's get with it. Alright, just close your eyes. And I want you to make a connection with your Mahara pillar. Alright, visualize it all around you to begin with. And as you make that full connection now, just for fun, draw a healthy quantity of pale silver energy up from the earth core, all the way out to the central plane, and see it diffusing throughout your pillars, throughout the cells of your body. Imagine it swirling around your DNA, playing with the 5 other sequences. Now in a minute, I'm going to give you the cue for the tones, but rather than interrupt you while you're toning, I'll remind you that whilst you are toning, you should be directing pale silver current and pale rainbow colour spectrum energy down through the body, out the soles of your feet, and into the planetary shields throughout the time that you're toning. So I won't interrupt you, I'll remind you again, okay? But just try and remember that. So.
Down, you're really down,
Yes.
just kind of giving the earth a gift.
Okay.
You're running the rainbow.
So we begin the toning. Arya Sutara, I Sutu Ishua. 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 Take it forward now as a group. Speed it up and increase the volume. Araya Sutara, I Sutu Ishua. Araya Sutara, I Sutu Ishua. Araya Sutara, I Sutu Ishua. Araya Sutara, Master. Just gently bring your attention back. Now this time I'm going to ask you to do some gentle spinning while you perform the 3 songs, the suffixes once more. And I want you to spin clockwise, which is in the direction towards your right arm, towards your right shoulder. This is the cue now. Okay, so just take it very gently, be aware of people in. Resume the tones. I'll tell you when to start. We'll do a few rounds and then reverse spin, but continue to tone the tones, right? Okay, so da-ki-om, 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 da-ki-om. Raise it all.
Increases a bit, it's called the increase, then voice voice comes up a bit, and it's faster the tones, and you get the Merkaba faster as the spin starts to go faster, then the voice comes up again, and every time you're amping the energy, okay? Once this is done smoothly, you have a really loud, where everybody's like, moving energy. With sound, you're building a standing wave of sound and light, particularly a sound wave, okay? And when you add, like, running the full array to this, which we'll get into tomorrow, all right, this is just the beginning of a round table, okay? But the idea is that we can, as a group, try to get the stages at which we move the sound and the motion up in speed. Like with some people, if they're singing too fast or too loud in the beginning, that's going to throw it up. So you just simply start slow, and their voice rises, and the speed of how you say the words rises as the spin rises, until you get a robust, fast spin with lots of sound coming out. And then when it's time, see what this is doing? This is building, it's torquing, it's making happen in the grids, right? In the planetary grids, and your fields are going. And then you don't want to go, whatever. Then you slowly bring the sound down, bring the slower spin, you slowly unwind. And what that does is the feel that you're creating in the grid kind of it goes back to stillness. So it helps you and the planet if we use the voice, voice up, speed up, and voice down, speed down thing, and try to do it as a group. Okay, so I'm going to explain that in the thumb thing. For anybody who's feeling dizzy, you just stare at the thumb and let that guide you. This is an old dancer's trick. Many dancers are taught so they don't get dizzy when they're learning how to do spins and things, like ballerinas and things. Well, it does help. It'll stop the vertigo from affecting you so much. And the real thing, if you're not falling down, is to, first of all, don't let yourself get spinning too fast. Let it build up to faster, and don't ever go faster than you feel your bounce. You can feel it, so you won't feel more. That's kind of nice and slow. Ease it. Don't stop it. Ease it back down to a slower rate. It doesn't matter if everybody's spinning at the same rate right now. It's important to find your rate of spin. Okay? Don't push it over. It'll increase as you go. But you'll be more comfortable with it, and you won't fall on the floor if you follow those simple words of advice. Okay?
Okay. Now we're going to move into what would be a continuous sequence that we're doing stage by stage. This is the sacred salutations toning dance, which I don't think it wasn't introduced very well.
This you can do every day, by the way, if you want to. This is how you set on a personal level. You can set your personal Merkaba back into its right spin ratios. All right, with or without a round table. We'll do combined with round table tonight, but you can do this alone.
I will still point out to you that this is when you begin to work with the rotational spin rates with your Merkaba. Now, the steps are as follows. Okay, there's not a lot to remember. You'll begin toning. We're going to use the lunar salutation tonight, which actually has you toning you are. Over and over again. That's all you do as far as toning's concerned. Okay, once you begin toning, you begin in the spin. Once the toning's begun, I will just say spin to you, and I expect to start to build your spin up as you build the tone up in the volume, okay, and the frequency, the rate, the tonal sound. And you're going to go clockwise. Counterclockwise.
Yeah, lunar is counterclockwise. If you're charging your bottom one, bring it up, bring the frequency up to you from the earth.
Okay.
So maybe your other one charged too, but at night you're going to do one.
Once you build the tone up using the word, all right. I want you to explore, if you feel inclined to do it, to alternate the air tone in groups of three with the instructions of the Merkaba spin rate, which is 11 and 2/3. So you say 11 2/3, 11 2/3, 11 2/3, as if it were a tone. Then go back to
Can I show you the demo? This is how wild it was on the choir. 11 and 2/3, 11 and 2/3, 11 and 2/3. 11 and 2/3, 11 and 2/3. This is what we were doing. It's like, you know how the Native Americans have these dances? This is what they were doing. Okay. So this is what he means by using the spin ratios. You can use the tone and then use what your brain knows as a translation, an English translation. So you're integrating all the aspects of you, okay? It's 11 2/3 for the bottom one, and the 33 1/3 when you're doing the top. Because this one you switch, right? You start with the magnetic, and there's going to be a switch then where you charge the top one too, but you charge it second. That's when you switch to 33 1/3. Which is even harder to say when you're spinning past it. So that one you can use the tone for. Every whole tune is the... Okay, yeah, let's on that time. Okay? We're doing the bottom one. We use and we're doing... You know, yeah, we're supposed to do...
Yeah, that's it.
Reverse the spin.
Yeah.
We're supposed to use both of those terms. One big, yeah, okay, that's what it is. Yeah. So yes, we're going to be using rocks. Okay, I just want to make sure, I understand the power.
So imagine just having a discussion about the notes here. The notes are fine, the managing notes anyway. Right, so look, I've explained to you about the level 2 sets, right? From that point, normally you would feel the energy, you would, with practice, feel the point that you were saturated really, and you'd be ready to slow down. You'd imagine the way that you're doing this alone, or that you're in a group. And you'd come to a point where you slow yourself down, whichever way you're slowing at the time, and you'd be finishing spinning clockwise, counterclockwise at this stage, that's right. Senior American deferring. At that point, you would go naturally into repeating the Hills memory activation sequence, which is Shaddai Array, Come, you know. Shaddai Array, Come.
Let's take that syllable by shoulder for the new people. It's sing with me. Shaddai. You'll get copies of this in your field guides, actually, so you have it. But the sound of it is Om Shaddai Om.
You'll hear us singing it over the microphone, which will help. This copy of the noise should be pretty good, I expect. Okay, now this is something you're doing, right? You're chanting this as you're slowing your spin, right? So by the time roughly you've done it 3 times, you will come to stop. All right. And you stand quietly for a moment, feel the energy flow, right? And then you plan to reverse the spin direction. At which point you then use the solar initiating tone, which is Ra. Okay, so you reverse the spin direction, you begin toning Ra, so you begin toning Ra and spin in the opposite direction.
On bottom, Ra on top.
And we'll tell you which way it goes, and then we'll tell you we're on the ladder line. And you repeat the process. Okay, so you build it up, feel the energy build up, and then bring yourself slowly back. And you will not repeat the Om Shaddai at that point. And the 3, 4, 3, 0 on right.
Yeah. After we get the top one, we start with the bottom, do the and spin there. Or do the top and do the Ra and spin there. Now in between those two, you have the Shaddai Array when you're making that switch. Now, when we get down with the top one, with the electrical one on top, then we're going to go into 3 rounds of the Uriya Kumnari. Okay, that's the one we sang last night. Omega, Ipa, There's one thing that just makes my hair stand on end from the old ancient days when we used to teach this in Egypt. Om Medai Padma. Om Medai Padma. It's like a very old Omega. And it needs to have a spurt of vitamin C or something. Okay? Now, when you first start it, it's understandable, and we usually teach it that way. But after a while, because when you know, there's a certain, with all of these tones, there's a certain thing you'll find and fall into. Too fast, doesn't feel harmonic, and too slow, doesn't feel harmonic either. So you'll learn, as you use the tones, the right one. You'll start to feel it. But after, for a while, you're thinking, how fast can I this one? So with the Omega, we do it this time because we're building some good energy here tonight. Rather than bottom out that energy and make it go to sleep and crawl across the floor, we need to keep the Omega up a little bit. Okay? Because the Omega will control the energy movement of what we've just created. And if we keep it too fast, it will be bouncing all over the walls. If we do it too slow, it will be rolling like dust balls across the floor. I'm sorry.
There was a spontaneous piece of video around in Kuwait, which we all get muddled up about which is male and which is female and which way is what going and what way everything else. There was a likable German in the audience who said the following. He said, how did it go? It was shocking in part electrical. It was shocking that males are always right in the morning. And in fact, if you incorporate that's top joke, it reminds you that the top is male, right? It's shocking electrical, always right in the morning.
Yeah.
Alright?
It's always very free and fair. 33-year-old male is always right in the morning.
Too much of an Anyway, right. Are we ready?
I stick to my closet.
We're rolling all. Alright. So, you just come back to being quiet and get ready to begin the initial tone, which is Alright, because this is a lunar stabilization, so we're beginning with Alright, so you ready? Just quieten down and start to tone and build it up in speed and volume as you've been doing with the others. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3, yeah. No. Start toning, increase the volume and the speed, and then I'll tell you to begin the spin. So just stand still and begin toning and build it up. Alright? When you build it up a little bit, I'll tell you to start to spin.
So, does anybody not sleep good last night?
Want to go on the boat while Scott's out?
I bet. The reason I asked, that's where when you expand your consciousness, when it starts to open, it can be like that. That's why we always say we don't promote the use of any drugs at all, not even natural ones, because you don't need them. Because you have your own, so you can get it activate, so you activate your energy fields on a natural energy, the way it's supposed to. You know, when you take drugs, you're actually firing out of sequence some of the fourth strand fire levers, and you don't have the third strand receptors open to help you bring that energy in order. Comes in and starts to crush the scalar templates, the third and lower strands. So if you use drugs, even if you're using natural drugs, this was coming up a question, or like kind of a discussion we were having out here. They got into the use of like drugs and expansion. He said, so I had some strange experiences like taking drugs, like some of the energy expanding. He said, this is why you don't need drugs. Now, people don't need drugs to get expanded states. Expanded states are a natural part of us. But when we use drugs to try to go in that space, we actually fire out of sequence the higher strand DNA templates. They throw frequency in a chaotic fashion, give you some flashes of expansion, and crush the lower templates in the DNA strands. So they progressively take away your ability to generate those experiences in the natural way on your own, those extended experiences. Anyway, that's what that was. Right. No, they're compared it to, but... Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Right? Yeah, this is why I was saying... Now, when you're getting into things to regulate the body that you're being prescribed by a doctor, we don't tell you don't take those, okay? You need to work with.
But does that also affect the DNA?
All types of medications affect the DNA, either directly or indirectly. But sometimes they fill in a blank that if you have a distortion in your scalar templates in a certain area, it's creating a chemical weakness. Sometimes having the prescribed drugs to fill in that blank chemically can help to regenerate the template underneath it. It's only going to be used for real long periods of time. It can cause more difficulty. So we're not against prescription drugs as far as if the doctor prescribes something because you need this. We try to say if there's a natural, healing way to do it, then by all means choose that way. But don't ever put your body on the line at the moment because you feel you have to go the natural way when you actually might be able to be helped by allopathic medicine. We're not one of the belief systems that teach, that we're such a purist that we teach everything, but what we're teaching is the wrong thing. No, this is very, very integrative, these teachings. We say, even it goes from any other, religious belief system. We'll point out what we feel about it, but you're welcome to, use it. If you feel you get benefit of it, use it. Same thing with medical treatments. If you feel you need a doctor for something or a chiropractor for something, by all means, go. Use your heart. See how long that's just anybody that touches you can accidentally put something in your fields that you don't want. You use your heart seal. That's your passcode anywhere. Because you don't, if you run the Maharata current, it's a passcode anywhere. So we're not saying that, tell your doctor, sorry, I don't, take drugs anymore or anything. That would be very irresponsible. Because if your body is used to allopathic treatment, you need to wean it where it gets its confidence back. That it knows it can start to take responsibility for some of its healing. So in response to blood pressure pills and stuff, no. We don't say, we don't endorse those. What I was talking about, there are a lot of people in the world that like to take mind-altering drugs to get experiences of spiritual expansion or psychic expansion or to communicate with the other beings, the other realms and stuff. This is a very strong shamanic tradition. And I don't care if the master shamans use it. I could be a master shaman too. I mean, the training that I have exceeds what most shamans have, and I know that. But they use substances to trigger the activation of dormant DNA strands. However, when they're triggering these activations, they're triggering the higher strand templates temporarily by putting in a chemical signature that has a scalar signature that can push that frequency. The lower strand templates are not naturally activated in sequence to receive that frequency. The frequency comes in and gives you a burst of expansion that belongs to the chemical, not to you, and is usually many times out of sequence, out of order. You don't know what you're getting or what you're looking at. And what it's doing is crushing the lower strand DNA templates, which is going to affect the chemical DNA, and it's going to affect your ability to create those natural expansions sequences on your own. See, when your consciousness expands naturally, your DNA progressively fires its fire letters in the right sequence, which you can't do unless you clear out the miasmic imprint, which we, the Arthurian works to help you do that. You will have progressive, gentle expansion into these states that doesn't go away once it's yours. You own the experience that way, and the expansion isn't erratic and chaotic. But when people use drugs to induce enlightenment, first of all, they're not getting enlightenment. They're getting a glimpse of what's beyond the perceptual range here. But it's a chaotic glimpse, but the glimpse is controlling them. The substance is giving it to them. They're not giving it to themselves and taking away their own ability to move into those states of expansion permanently and assimilate them into a way where you can literally shift from one to the other. So this is the distinction I was making with the drugs. It's the mind expansion drugs. They're not expanding. We were inspired here long ago to begin using substances this way. Because it was very easy. When you use substances this way, they trigger activation randomly in certain parts of the fourth DNA strand template, which is connected to your astral field, which means it makes openings in your astral field. And if you don't know you have an astral field and how to seal it or protect it, which you do, memory and Maharaj frequency, anything can attach itself to you. We were tricked a long time ago. In ancient times, this was being done all the time, where if something wanted to get into your astral field, and they could get you to be a little irresponsible, you want to open up, you take something, your field opens up, you get a little bit of expanded perception, and you get field attachment. This has been going on for literally hundreds of thousands of years on this planet. So this is why, yes?
But it's also true that sometimes when you open and you're protected, you don't necessarily need to attract anything negative. We need to talk about the goodies, finally. Sometimes when you open, you don't need to have anything astral attached to you or anything negative attached to you. It seems to be like anytime you open, you're totally unprotected and you're totally exposed. And I do not believe that is the case.
Who do you believe might be protecting your field if you don't have the wisdom on a conscious level to do it? Do you think an angel is going to do it for you?
No, myself. I protect myself.
Okay. How are you going to protect yourselves if you don't know where your fields are? Or if you're not taking responsibility for running the frequency?
I can talk to my God source.
Do you think your God source is going to do it for you? Is that what you're saying?
My God source is myself.
Yes, it's yourself. We all have a self that's an avatar. Yeah. And we can all say, oh, well, we don't have to do anything. Our avatars will take care of it.
No, we do it. I do it.
Yes.
I order it. I invoke it.
Yes.
It's done.
It's good to invoke it. Yes.
I order it. It's done.
Yeah. There is a difference, however, between I say, therefore it is, and I say, and I know what I'm doing, therefore I can make it happen. There is a difference between these two things. A lot of people assume that there are higher levels of consciousness.
I don't assume. I know it's done.
Okay, so good. You can feel that you know it's done. Yeah. And if you feel you don't need a Moharic seal because you know it's done, you can do that too. And we will all have the consequences of our choices. Is all I can say to you on that. All right? I know from where I've been, and I have a lot of memory, okay? And I have a lot of experience of going through the astral. In fact, I can tell you key codes to all sorts of gates from here to D15.
I know.
I'm not a neophyte, and I'm not a person who doesn't know what I'm talking about.
I know.
I use my Moharic seal all the time. Why? Because I know it's needed. I have an avatar level of D12 that I can just say, you do it. But I also know that D12, myself here, is supposed to be responsible for myself. I'm supposed to be responsible for my energy fields. And myself at D12, because it loves me very much and doesn't want me to be an irresponsible person, because irresponsibility ends up not only hurting you, but it ends up exposing other people who depend on you to things that can happen. I know with me that my higher parts, yes, they could beam down protection and leave it at that. But if it were so darn easy, nobody had field infiltration. It takes both parts doing their part. Part of my part is not just saying, well, I decree it so because I know you're going to do it. It's having the knowledge and the willingness to do it here. So, everybody's, you can have any relationship to protection that you want. And you can have any perception you'd like of what you think is out there in the middle dimensional fields. And you may teach yourself that there's more than you thought there was. And maybe you won't in this life. Maybe you won't know. I talk about the negatives a lot for one reason. Nobody else out there is doing it. They're leading people to believe that as soon as you expand into consciousness, it's all sweet love flowers, go float around in the astral. They're teaching you this, so you go through, It's like teaching you to go swimming in the middle of the ocean, knowing you have not had one swimming lesson. This is so. You're very easy to move. Now you can sit there with a level of confidence that I won't go into what the look on your face looks like right now, because it doesn't look very open to learning anything. You're looking at me with this look that says, I don't need that, I'm beyond that.
No, I'm listening.
And you can do this. You can do this. I wish you wouldn't, but
you have to
I
understand.
understand.
You have to understand that you come from a level of consciousness which I respect and I love dearly. But it doesn't mean that all of us are the same. It does not mean that every single one of us can do it as well. Maybe equally well, maybe even better. It's not good or better, you know. It is possible to do it, you know. It is possible, and it's possible to be responsible in this earth without having any fear whatsoever. I understand you are right, because it's true. Once we span in consciousness, there's all sorts of things. It's true. But there's also lots of lovely things as well.
Oh, there are lots of lovely things. And we'll get to experience the lots of lovely things if we don't get sidetracked by the things that aren't so lovely. And if we go through looking for the lovely things and being afraid to deal with the fact that there are things that aren't lovely. Because people who really need to just see the good stuff, what they're really doing, there's a fear in there of dealing with the other stuff. Why? Because they're still considered bad. I talk about things that people consider negative. I point out things that can hang you up in your development. If you allow it, I point out how to not allow that to happen. But one thing I do point out all the time, do I look like I'm afraid? Do I teach you to be afraid? There's not an ounce of fear in anything I teach. You can go where angels fear to tread if you know how to handle your feelings. This is what I teach. I'm not challenging the fact that, yes, you have protection because you decree it so. But to degree something so, you also have to do the work to some degree. Somebody's got to be responsible. Some level of your consciousness needs to be responsible enough. In fact, every single level of consciousness needs to be responsible enough to do its part. All right? You're not expected right now, unless you have a full avatar contract where you have to get all those strands activated immediately. You're not expected to hold and act like your D12 self would. Your D12 self will give you some protection. It'll do its best. But if you're not anchoring that here, and you're letting stuff get into your astral field, you make it very hard for that level of your consciousness to do its job. So what I'm not... There's an issue of negativity here that I think I would like people to understand. If you think that we're teaching the negatives, you're only showing the negative stuff, you have 20 years on your mountain teachings out there to go teach you about the flowers, all right? You have all sorts of teachers teaching you about the joys. They're not teaching you much at all about the things that are negative out there. This is why we're trying to show you both sides. It is joyful out there. It is expansive out there. You have these levels of consciousness out there. There's a difference between a child and a grown-up. The difference is awareness and the ability to handle oneself within the environment they are in. I'm not teaching kindergarten. I'm teaching how to take the joy and knowing that the expansion is there, and how to take the next step into being a grown-up, where you learn to face the things that aren't too pleasant. Learn to handle yourself effectively and joyfully with it. There is the joy out there. Why is it so unjoyful to face the fact of things that some people consider negative? If you're an avatar consciousness, you don't make a difference between the two. Oh, this one does this to the energy, this one does this. You love them both. This is where I come from, I talk about them. But I'm not going to pretend loving them means, okay, yeah, let them create bullshit, let them do that. That wouldn't be loving them. Because to really love the negative things, you also want and desire their healing. And if we're supposed to be a part of the healing, we can't let ourselves get flattened. That comes down to responsibility. So anybody that feels that the teachings are too negative, I would like to point out first that I have pointed out the negatives first, to try to counterbalance the fact that sugar-coated candy has been taught here to this point. All right? There needs to be a counterpoint to that, where you start to see that, yes, the light, love, the sweetness is here, the joy is here, our expansion is here, but if we walk around in a little bubble thinking, everything's all right every moment, we're going to be irresponsible, we're not going to do our part to keep ourselves in integrity, and we're certainly not going to feel motivated enough to bother using our energy to help the planet, because we're going to think somebody's going to take care of the planet for us. And that's not the way it works. We were appointed as a guardian race. Okay? We were born as a guardian race here, and that implies responsibility. It implies privilege. The privilege of having all of these other spaces available to us. We have the privilege of getting back what was originally our gift, which was the ability to have cellular transmutation. So the universe becomes an open door to us. But you don't get those things back just by thinking pretty thoughts. You get them back by learning the mechanics of how to handle yourself, how to handle your mental body, emotional body, physical body, then how to handle your astral body and your soul body, then how to handle the rest of yourself. With privilege goes responsibility. And this is what we try to teach. Now, there is a high side to this, and I do leave this, because what I like to do is get people through the point where they go through the tough stuff, the stuff nobody's teaching me I want to hear. It's not fun to teach this. I would much prefer have everybody smiling all the time and say, oh, that was a great workshop. This made me feel so great all the time. I didn't have to deal with anything negative. If you happen to not like me, or like what I teach, because it confronts you with the stuff you'd rather not confront, at least something here is bringing you into a space where you can look at some of the things that you might be fearing, or that might be holding you back, that you'd rather not see. That's the only way you're going to be able to move through and get to a higher level. We've had those freedoms that you desire. Now, there's a good point to this, too. We've talked about the races and things that are out there that are causing problems here. The fallen races that have some really distorted consciousness, where they don't remember the oneness, they don't remember the love. It's really interesting when you confront a being who really has not the ability within his body anymore to feel a love vibration. It's a type of consciousness that coming from a human space, which is a space that's very normally loving. Humans have the ability to bond with all sorts of things because of the 12 strands of DNA potential. Love is a state of vibrational harmonization, where vibrational patterns go like this and they merge. That's where the emotional sensation of love comes from. It's from the ability to merge with just about anything. You can merge with each other and you feel love between people. You can merge with the planet and you can feel great, profound love with the planet. You can merge with a plant and feel it. If your vibrations can match the vibrations of another, you will enter a state of unconditional love, which is a state and energy of vibrational harmonization. What is an amazing thing, and I remember this because it was an amazing thing 200 years ago when we had a confrontation with it, 200,000 years ago. Angelic humans, because that's what we are an angelic race, because we have that capacity to bond with all sorts of things, to feel it, and to empathize. There was a naivety in our consciousness that we assumed everything was able to do that. Even with things like an Anunnaki being who was really messed up at the time, it was trying to destroy you. You could feel its pain. But what was bigger awakening was realizing not all beings perceive that way. They did not feel their own pain. They did not feel the pain they were inflicting on others. They, in fact, had no remorse whatsoever and really felt that anything was at their disposal and they could destroy it if they so chose. They had no respect for life. In truth, they had no respect for themselves or the race. This is a confrontation when you realize that not everything is loving and sweet like you. Right? Not everything has that capacity because it lost it. Originally, everything had it. And at the D12 level and higher, Anunnaki had it too. But they have that middle range where distortion happens that unplugs all of that. I try to prepare you. That's why I tell you about the negatives. Because I try to prepare you for what you're in for. Not because I'm guessing, not because I have an ounce of fear in me. I get a little tired of it all after a while. I'd like to go to a place where we weren't in the polarity universe, where there wasn't all these conflicts going on. But I know how overwhelming it can be. If you start to expand, which you're going to, because the planet's going to have your DNA activate, it's either going to activate comfortably and in sequence, or it's going to activate in a way that causes chaos. I would like you to be prepared with absolute ease and confidence. You say, oh, well, that isn't that bad. Yeah, there's this stuff that people consider negative, but I can deal with that. I'm not teaching you to be afraid of it. I'm not teaching you to get overwhelmed by it. What I'm trying to teach you to do is face it and not have a problem with it. Say, oh, okay, I can handle myself with that. Yes.
Ashana,
yes.
We are a very special team of people that completely trust you. Completely trust you.
Yes.
And I'm quite wasted. I want these people to know that I have been kidnapped in this lifetime by ruthless, reptilian scaled beings with claws and tails that had no care whatsoever
for my pain. And they personally hurt me beyond anything that I possibly could ever comprehend. And they enjoyed it. In this lifetime, this body has experienced that. So when I gather here as part of a security Templar team to bring balance to this planet, I trust the tools that she gives us to protect ourselves in this case. You know, I'm not all about love and light. I teach about feeling feelings and going into the depth of the horror so that we can actually be real with what's there. And I personally want you to know, you know, and I work with a lot of clients who've been there as well, because they find me because they know I can empathize with their horror. That what she says is right on. They're ruthless and heartless.
Thank you.
And I mean, I walk around this building and I see symbols that help me trigger back to some of that horror, and I sit in the hallways and I cry sometimes, and you don't know that about me. But I'm deeply committed to humanity, not having to have the obscurement of soul that these beings are committed to doing. You know, they're ruthless, blood-sucking, you know, pain, and they have done stuff to us, to our bodies, and most of us walk around not knowing that. And your books are a gift to humanity, that they help us remember some of the memories that we haven't been capable of remembering because they were so horrible. No one ever gave us permission to remember that horror.
And so very grateful for the books too. Oh, their books.
God.
The Yannis books. You know, thank you very much. This is what out. Some people that haven't had a confrontation with what other people have, it isn't real to you until you do. There's a hard way to live and an easy way. The hard way is when you say, well, I guess it feels for you, but it's not for me. And then your soul tends to take you into direct confrontation with them. And you find out what it's like for you, so you get to understand those people. Alright? She understands because she has had encounter with them. There's a lot of people who don't even realize that many people are having encounters with some of these negative forces. One of the big tricks is they don't let you remember. They wipe the memory clean. The memory will come back 20 years later in pieces where your emotional body's falling apart and you don't know why.
It's taken everything that I have in my life, thousands and thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to remember. And your book was the #1, you know, I can't even embarrass it. The Awakening of the Abductee. You know,
Sleeping Abductees? Yeah, Voyager's Volume 1.
Yeah, that was the #1 key of all the things I've done that helped put it back together for me. You know, because I'd had this extraordinary healer life and this extraordinary consciousness life and all these abductions and kidnappings and space experiences and all the love and light, and I'm amazingly telepathic, but nothing ever made sense until you helped put it together for me. Now I understand who I am and why I would be in popular real estate and why I would be taken at 7 years old with blonde hair and blue eyes, and why, you know,
This is something that most people don't know at all. You know what's funny? When I was given the information for Voyager's Volume 1, these are the Yannis books. They're composed of information drawn from the history records of the city place, and they're drawn from telepathic dispensation from the Yanni, or sometimes direct when they, when I meet with this book. When they gave me Voyager's Volume 1 to put out, I had similar experiences in early childhood, and they had protected me. And they stopped those experiences from happening. Boy, was I grateful. When that book came out, I didn't want to publish it. I knew other people needed it because it helped me to understand what I'd been through. But I didn't want to be the author's name on the bottom of the book. You know, I didn't want to be associated with the negative stuff at all. I had an education to go through where I came from love, light, and I don't want to know about anything negative. And if anybody talks about anything too negative, I'm going to go the other way because I don't need to deal with it. I went from that space, which I later learned was a space of denial, because at the core of it there was a terror of not being able to handle myself in the face of it, so therefore I had to make it not real. I had to make sure the world was a safe place, so I'd only accept certain beliefs about the way the world was, because they made me feel safe. I learned, as I grew and expanded, that I can live in a little bubble and shelter myself and create a belief system that only allows in light, love, happiness, that only requires that I just show up and everybody else will take care of me up there, and that I'm just going to trust that God is absolutely perfect, which God is, and that in that perfection only goodness is allowed, which is not true. In that perfection, utter freedom is allowed, out of the love that is source. And in that freedom, beings have the choice to be the opposite if they choose, and sometimes they choose. In my rude awakening, I came to a space where I had to look at myself and how afraid I was of what it might really be like, of why I needed to hold on tight to ideas of sweetness, of, oh, that's too heavy, get me away from that. Why? Because I don't think I can deal with it. That's why, There's a lot of soul searching, and there will be for everybody. When you're confronted with certain ideas that shake up the safe little system of beliefs that we've been confronted with. However, if we let ourselves and have the courage to be shooken up a little bit, it will allow us to grow. If we weren't meant to be shook up, our souls and our oversouls and our avatars would not have drawn us into an experience where that would happen. You would not be led to a workshop that made you start to question things, or that got you angry enough for you to, that is creating a shift. If you were in a space here, in a rigid space of ideas, and we all have rigid spaces of ideas, and then we move beyond them, and then we create another space, and they're good until we outgrow them, then they feel rigid, and then you move to another one. We'll be led to the types of encounters that we need. And this even goes to the point of the negative ones. A lot of the people that have the worst encounters are the ones who took very courageous soul contracts in this lifetime, to come in, go down to the depths of the depths and find out what was there, that all the angels were afraid to look at.
So we know.
So we know, and we could assist the others. Yeah. Now, I don't think it's worth carrying. It's not even quite a focused debate that's happening here. There might be some movement on this in the personal thing. We could possibly have this conversation in private, because I think there's something we feel we're not understanding with each other that we can. All right. Now, I did want to address the issue of the negativity of the teachings. First of all, that's the word you can frame these teachings with if you want to.
Your teachings are negative, though. You don't even come close.
But some people tell me that, they're afraid of the negative. People are saying you're too negative, so you're talking about the good stuff. So, excuse me, this is part of the good stuff. It's real life.
It's way worse than you're saying. I work with bodies every day. It's way worse. It's way fucking worse than anybody who's ever said. And you hint at it in your book. You say it's way worse in your book, and I promise you, I touch bodies, and I watch them when they go to even think something bad about that might have happened, and they just go to sleep on the table. And I'll say, come back. And now they come back, and they're just like, where did I just go? I said, you were just famous.
The pleasure of seeing a D11 dark avatar depossession that takes 8 months.
I'm telling you guys,
okay.
We are a special team, and if any tools we can use right now to keep ourselves really straight, to get this job done is worth anything. This job is very necessary on the planet, and that's why we've come all the way across the world, to be here, to do this.
Thank you for your support.
We're in the den.
Yes. Yes, this is what I was trying to address. I almost got there.
Of experiences with so-called northern light that have been so reptilian and so brutal. If we call it the truth, maybe we can stop hopping on polarities.
Yeah, but I feel bad when like some people come down and say, well, everyone talk about the good stuff, the happy stuff. People think your teachings are too negative. First of all, I don't look at these teachings as negative. I don't frame them as negative. I am so grateful to the Yanni, to my avatar level, to the universe, to the source, for allowing me to know this while I'm here. It's easy to know this when you're out of density 1 Earth. Because in density 1 Earth, you have all the channels of communication blocked here. This is what we're trying to fix. It's extremely difficult to have access to this knowledge when you're here. So you have a chance in heck of getting yourself together while you're here. So I have a huge gratitude. I look at these things, they're not negative. I get sometimes where I like to feel like, I wish I could just do the fun stuff for a while. Teach people like psychic development 101. You know what I mean? How to go spin dance in the fields, right? How to talk to flowers. Because you can. Oh, it's wonderful to talk to flowers and to talk to trees. And there's a whole world to communicate with and a whole world of joy. These are the things I really like to be teaching because it brings people up. However, if you don't teach them with the other stuff, you're going to get them into talking to flowers, then you're going to have something come into their field and take over, and pretty soon something else besides them is going to be talking up their mouth. You need to have the balance, and that's what we're doing here. And they're not negative. also to understand. Now, we have talked about it. So it's kind of funny that through the course of a workshop, I kind of know where I want to go with the flow. You know, it's going to move people's awareness from one space to another, and then there's going to be a finale of where, ideally, that will end up, where they went from, where the reason they came to the workshop was to learn something, right? Where they go from not knowing what's in the workshop to expanding in a way that provides something good for them. So they can leave there and they know they have something. So there's a pacing of the way we present information. So yes, this time we went into, let's have an encounter with, not quite how bad is it, because believe me, how we've presented it, we've just showed you the edges. We don't need to show you more. The edges are enough. You can get the picture. But that's not where we're planning to lead everybody. There is a whole crew of support that we have. We all have parts of ourselves that are in the higher forms, in the higher dimensions. When we come in as our 1,728 cells, and where he goes, it's a lot more than that. We're placed in 5 different time cycles in the 15-dimensional system. Actually, that's only 4 time cycles. We have more self up in the last time cycle, in the density 5. It's interesting because when we think of the angels and archangels and ascended masters and all that, boy, who are these wonderful beings? They're us up there. Every being comes from a collective of consciousness. It's called stair-step creation. The way we get here is we are all one consciousness to begin with. Then we begin to polarize in order to enter smaller forms. Each step of the way, we leave a part of ourselves. In these primal sound fields, we all have a part of ourselves that is an ascended master. So we have this huge support. And we come down into density, the interstellar races that we talk about. I call them angelic races, because if you just call them ETs, you're missing the point that there's density levels, and you're missing the point that this is all about what our spirituality has been about all along. So we tend to use, we started with the ETs with the first book, because that was for those people who look at them as ETs. If we called them angels in the first book, they wouldn't read a book. They don't want to learn about angels. They don't believe in spirituality. That was for the people that are really like in the UFO movement, as opposed to the people that were going in the New Age movement. Angels, ETs, all that stuff means the same thing. The interdimensional beings. And who are they? They're portions of ourselves. Now, if we came in on an indigo imprint or a full human imprint, that means we're a human soul, and we probably didn't enter unless we wanted to find out what it meant to be in that form. We probably don't have incarnations that would be reptilian or that would be Anunnaki or something. Some of us, the more courageous of us, did choose to enter cycles like that, just to find out what the problem was, so it could be fixed. Alright? But there is this huge fleet, if you could call it, universal fleet of consciousness. We talk about Anunnakis coming in, Dracs coming in. What has been here all along will always be here, and it's why things will be okay. And it's where that protection comes from that I think she was trying to get across. That yes, there is a protection, a huge protection, if we do our part in that protection. There's a group of beings called the Brennal Rishi. They're huge gestalts of consciousness. Each one of us has a part of ourselves as one of those. There are families, universal families of consciousness. They're stationed in the primal light fields of density 5. The primal light fields of density 5 are composed of their consciousness. So when we talk about light and energy, we're not talking about something separate from beingness and identity. We have, first of all, the Brennal Rishi. And there are 3 primary groups of Brennal Rishi in this time matrix. You have the Emerald Order, you have the Gold Order, and you have the Amethyst Order. Now what those orders refer to are which of the primal light fields that particular Rishi group is stationed in. Remember we talked about the, I don't think I have this one, I wasn't planning to go here with it. When we have that 15-dimensional matrix, there's a little one up here, right? And then that's what this thing is. That's like a small version of the bigger ones that you've had in your graphs and things like that in your pack. We talked about the blue flame, gold flame, and violet flame as the primal light fields of dimension 13, 14, and 15. That's where the names of those orders come from. Emerald Order goes with the blue flame, the Akkadic flame, which is a deep 13, but it's actually the highest one that connects to the Akkadic level of the sound fields. It's the fact you have to go into full expansion and be trapped back to D13 to get out of the time matrix. Now this is a station of consciousness that we each have a part of ourselves within. We're always surrounded by our universal family of consciousness, our galactic family of consciousness, and our planetary family of consciousness. We're never alone here, and we're not abandoned. Now, some things can take a long time to fix, and that's the case, as what has happened here, when you look at time in a linear fashion. When you look at time as a space thing, you just see a bunch of simultaneous action happening to get to a certain point, and that's what we're doing. We start with our support system being the Brenner Rishi. Now, they will come down. The portions of the Brenner Rishi collectives, either the Emerald Order, the Violet Order, or the Amethyst Order, will come down and give support to us, literally. I mean, if you see a Rishi coming into somebody's field, or if you ever see this big whitish, silver, sometimes gold colored thing standing behind a person, the head comes up about like this, and the shoulders will be about here, and it just kind of hangs there. It's like a two-dimensional form that hangs there. That's what Rishis appear as when they come down. That energy comes down to join in here. Now, they're not in full manifest state. They're in a gaseous state. Okay, it's called thermoplasm. It's a gaseous state that's not even, it's like nowhere heavy like gas is here, like gaseous substances here. Then we have more support. And it's not just the ones attached to us, it's the ones attached to everybody. These are huge collectives of consciousness. In density 4, we have what are called the founders' races. The founders' races are the beings that are composed of pale silver liquid light. They can take any form they choose. They can choose to be dense, or they can choose not to be dense. They can manifest down here in physical form, any form they like, and they can visit whenever they want, and then they disappear if they like to. They can, you might be the bag lady you meet on the street because you had a need, or had a need to pass on some frequency to you, and then went back home. You never know when you're dealing with the founder, because they can come in any shape or any form. They also, when necessary, will create massive Merkabas, that when they come down, Merkaba fields, collective ones, that when they come down into densities, appear as what's called motherships. When they densify, they appear as spaceships. Now, they not only appear as spaceships, you can take one founder who decides it's going to come down in the densities to interact with whatever group of beings it wants to interact with. And that one founder, in order to get itself down, if it chooses to take on the form of a spaceship in order to make that type of contact, it will not only become the spaceship, it will become the thousands of people crew that's on it. This is the level of consciousness, the amount of consciousness these beings have. And you have a part of you that is one of these beings. Now, when we get into density 3, we're going into etheric matter density. Here's where all sorts of things are running around in kind of like ghost-like form. There are huge civilizations there. They have more form than the liquid light thing. They also have the ability to manifest and demanifest at will. But in those spaces, they tend to choose to stay in a kind of like ghost-like reality that appears physical to them when they're there. But they have much more ability to move matter with their minds. And they, in fact, create it to entertain themselves. All right, so it's a place, etheric matter density, density 3, you don't have to necessarily create form. You can decide to not create it for a while and hang out as consciousness. There are beings that have visited regularly this planet for millions of years. And they visit Tara and they visit Gaia. They come from Gaia, which is the density 3 level of this planet. There are fleets of these beings, billions of races, that are part of the Emerald Covenant. The Emerald Covenant was the original, 950 billion years ago, when the last life wave was seeded into this time matrix. It was done so through a thing called the Emerald Covenant, when the 3 primary seed groups, the 3 Brenner Rishi groups that were coming into seed life in this time matrix, agreed that this would be a free time matrix. It would hold a vision of joy and freedom, and it would, the beings in it would be the greatest expression of Source as possible. They would be free. It was supposed to be built on joy. It was supposed to be built on let's play. Here's what we do now. It was not supposed to be a conflict-laden place. There would be learning opportunities to deal with conflict, but it got way out of control. So we have all of these levels of beingness. We're attached to them, but they're also just as independent. If you met one of your founder selves, it would be very different from how you look in your body right now. And you would look at each other, hello, and the founder would probably recognize fully, hi, you're me, right? You might, if you realize that's what's happening. It would be as strange to you right now as the concept, and you know, even though your mind knows it's true, your emotional body still kind of does the suggestive thing. If I look at you and say, I am you, you are me, there is no difference whatsoever between us. We are one consciousness. We are God. We are the one Source. There is only one consciousness in the universe. Where I can really look at you your founder's race level cells would know fully what that meant. You would just start in this level of density, start to begin to realize what it means. It doesn't mean that you're not in a different body than I am right now. It doesn't mean that you have different thoughts and ideas than I do right now. It doesn't mean that mine's better, yours better than mine. If we can begin to realize that, first of all, we're all one consciousness, even the Draconians, even the Anunnaki, even fallen races that do horrible things, even people like Hitler. We are all one consciousness, expressions of the consciousness of God, either fully embodying that to our best, or for some reason unable to embody that to a good level, where we do things that are totally not in harmony with God. When we get down to density 2, things get all sorts of fun. This is where you're in semi-etheric matter density, which is a stage between real dense here and ghost-like in etheric density 3. There are sort of huge, massive civilizations there. A lot of them use external technology still, where they have spaceships that go in the sky, and they have advanced buildings on their planet. They do external buildings. Some of them can manifest and de-manifest to some degree, some can fully, but they choose to have externally manifest civilizations. There are billions of Emerald Covenant races in density 2. When you compare the amounts of Draconian force and Anunnaki force, you combine those forces, they don't have 1/1,000,000 of the amount of participants or energy compared to the Emerald Covenant races, who uphold the Founder's vision, and who have open communication with the Brunel Rishi and love it. I wouldn't settle for anything less. There are more Christed races in this time matrix than there are non-Christed races. But there are trouble areas, certain areas in space-time, that are concentrations of where the non-Christed races got control. And that's where the Christed races get sent in to restore the balance, so it doesn't get too far out of balance. And at times it has gotten too far out of balance. We're part of one of those rebalancing projects. Okay? I'd like you to know that we have huge support. There are organizations. The first one, and this is the one that when I was asked to go public with the information about the Yanni and the Inner Earth people, and the people from Tara, because the first contact was made not by the Inner Earth ones, but by the people from Tara, which was density 2. They were the human civilizations that had evolved from the success of this time frame going on. They had contacted me and said, trained me when I was a child. And then I was taken to Inner Earth to meet some of the Inner Earth people. But when it was time to bring the information to them in public, they said, just call us the Guardian Alliance. I said, okay, Guardian Alliance. Cut down to, well, who's in the Guardian Alliance? There's billions of races in the Guardian Alliance. Not just billions of people, billions of races. Oh, cool. Oh, by the way, the Guardian Alliance is part of a much larger organization. Larger? Yeah, it's called the Interdimensional Association of Free Worlds. Oh, okay. I was taken once to a base that they have on Tara, where they're making contact with time frames down here, where there's trouble areas. They have a physical building, and it's a training school for all sorts of, if you're going to use portals and you're going to go through stargates and things like that, there is like a training system to do this. So I saw it physically. The only reason they were able to take me off planet was because they assisted in giving temporary activation to the gene code. If I hadn't been an indigo, first of all, they wouldn't have been able to do it at all. But I was taken there physically, and I was able to see the realities of these things. When it came to, okay, we have the Interdimensional Association of Free Worlds. Well, they're part of a bigger organization. They are. Yeah, the Azurite Universal Templar Security Team. What? They're the guys who were originally created, even before the humans were created, to be the guardians of the 12 universal stargates and the systems within the 15 dimensions, to make sure that the balances never got too far out of order where this time matrix collapsed onto itself. Then, found out when we went to Peru, last year, we met a group called the Llanos. The Ramianos, the Huachianos, and the Grandianos. Who are you guys? Well, those other groups you're working with in the densities. We're from the primal sound fields. You call us Yanni collectively. Yanni is what the words Ascended Master really meant. And what Ascended Masters really are not guys who run around in robes down in their world calling themselves Ascended Masters. What they are are beings who are fully in their space and stationed in the primal sound fields. Right? They don't even consider you an ascended master until you make it back out of the time matrix. Alright? So they have a whole set of criteria that's a lot different than I made it to D5, so I'm an ascended master stuff. Right? And it's like, well, there's only one more level to go, guys. Next time we're going to have 5, oh God. You know what I mean? And basically, that's what we have anyway, in many, many, many voices. We have a huge support team here. And what's interesting, it's a very organized support team. There are 12 universal stargates that control the densities from D12 on down. There is a huge coalition called the Stargate Signet Council that are appointed guardians, and they have been for eons, appointed guardians of each of those stargates. We have, because indigos have to incarnate in a special way in order to not get distortion on their 6th strand, because it's activated. And if they came through Stargate 4 to birth into Earth's, to come down through Stargate 4 into Earth with D3, they would pick up distortions that are in the solar gates right now from the Anunnaki and nibiruian connection. We come through what's called the Council of Azraleen. That is the G6 Council of Sirius B, the Maharaji Council. They're the blue humans on their station. The ones there, they look like humans. They're a bit taller than we are, but they look very much human, and they're blue skin. They're half Azurite and half Orphine. Orphine were where the non-blue skin human line came down through. The human race is a Lyra-Syrian race. That was the original, before we became what's called human here. We're at a Lyra-Syrian matrix of consciousness. We're a composite race, where the Emerald Order, the Gold Order, and the Amethyst Order, Brennan Rishi, chose to create a race that had all of their characteristics in it, so it would carry all of the codes of the density fields. It would carry the blue flame, the gold flame, and the violet flame, and the primal sound field connections. Right now, this place is like, if you go to a movie house and there's a big new movie showing, right? It's like, heard it advertised, and everybody swamps in the movie theater. Well, Earth is like that one movie theater right now. The stuff that's going down here has brought the negatives from all over the place, but it has brought the positives from all over the place. All the attention is focused here. We're being asked to simply help them, because we have the codes in our DNA that can run this planet's Templar. They don't have those unless they were born on this planet, unless they incarnated physically on this planet. We came in as part of an agreement. Humans did, not just indigos, but all humans came in to serve as part of the planetary restoration mission that was on. I'm going to get into some of this a little bit later, because I wanted to kind of go into a sequence of things that got a little bit off, but that's good, because the room kind of takes on a life of its own sometimes, and I think that's good. But I want you to realize, yes, I talked about the negatives. I wanted you to know, okay, not how bad it is, because believe me, I didn't tell you that. I figured I'd let you figure that out. I prepared you enough. But I wanted you to know that this is serious. Alright? It's not a New Age fluff joke that you can do on weekends and then go away, and then I think I'll be spiritual on weekends again. A lot of this is happening in the New Age community. I'll be full of light love now. I got to go back to my office job. Okay, I'll go and do a toning session down the beach this weekend. A lot of people really relate to spirituality this way. They think that's it. I'm trying to help you understand, because you're capable of understanding. You're special people. You have an awareness already. You've been walking out of this door a long time ago. Because I didn't hold you conscious on this. I didn't baby you guys. Sometimes I will. If it's an audience that I think can get to a certain space, but I can feel the limitations. What's wonderful about you guys is you didn't have them. You were open. You wanted to know. You didn't impose any limitations on me as a speaker where I had to baby you, where I had to, I'll tell you that and not that, and very gently get you. So you didn't reject what I was trying to help you learn. You just said, great, tell me, I'll listen. I'm glad that you did this. Now, I want you to know, too, that the support we have here is huge. We came in as part of that support team. If it came down to where things went, worst case scenario, see, I always like to look at things this way. You have a best case scenario, which would be, the perfect vision of how you'd like it to be. Then you have worst case scenario, which is usually the absolute opposite of how you'd like it to be. If you can deal with both of those, it's like, all right, well, I'm not even attached. It doesn't have to be any one way for me to keep my function, for me to keep stable, for me to keep okay. I'm going to be okay, regardless of what takes place. And I'm going to do my best to be at peace and joyful while I'm doing it. I wanted to be able to look at both of those spaces and go into a third space of, this is the way, this is the nature of the game when you're down here. And to realize you came as a representative of this side, the side of light. I'm hoping that each of you get a chance to begin meeting the people that I'm speaking about. Because when you do, it leaves me speechless. I mean, if it hadn't been for the direct contact that I've had repeatedly since I was a child, I never would have had the courage to do what I'm doing now. But once you know how real they are and how real the game is, you get courage where you think you couldn't. I can talk to people half the time I know are never going to want to hear me again and never want to talk to me again. And actually, when they're talking behind my back and they say all sorts of nasty things about me. This happens. Because I'm putting challenging material out. You guys haven't done that, and I thank you. I've left you with some information about the negative situation we're in. Except I don't perceive it as negative, and I would prefer if you didn't either. It simply, to me, looks like, a job that needs to be done. And the funny thing is, it's not a job we're incapable of doing. It was the crash course, and we were on vacation off here in Sleeper's Land, and all of a sudden, excuse me, now's the time. So you have to kind of drag yourself out of your vacation and come back to, oh yeah, I did have a job, didn't I? Really, it's the same transition. We've been on the amnesia sleep track for a while, like everybody else on the planet. And now it's like, knock on the brain, hello, you did come in with a soul contract, And remember, even if you don't remember, which you probably don't yet, but that's been guiding you all your life. And there was a point where wake up would happen. Well, it's happening now, because now is one of the things that needed to be done. It takes a while to adjust to that. To adjust to, I gotta get functional. What's that mean? I don't even remember who I am. That kind of stuff. But we'll do it. I want you to feel positive, if you can. Now, I can't control how you feel, how you react. It's completely with you. I'd like you to understand some things, too. I've had some people in a few other workshops say, well, gosh, I started working with my higher self. All sorts of horrible things happened. I was getting these visions. Things were like in my field. Yeah, great. I wonder what age you picked them up at. People tend to blame the material because they just started trying. It kicks stuff up. Stuff they've had with them since they were a child sometimes. I met one person who, since he was 17 years old, had a deal with a dark avatar in his field. It never came out. It would just direct him here and there when it to serve its purposes. Boy, did it come out when he started using the higher frequency. Oh boy, all three faces. Literally, face over the ways. And then one of the face over the ways came out and looked at me and said, he thinks it's just him. And he laughed at me, right? That really made me mad. You creep. And I was committed at that point. If I could help this person to get that thing out of him, because it was tricking him, and I didn't realize it was there. This is what they do. If you have a field problem, you're not going to know it's there unless it wants you to. So you can, if you start getting stuff come up, and you work with the higher frequency, hey, I didn't end up in the higher frequency, I'm just telling you. You can call it bad, you can label it, you can blame it on this. But you might also want to consider what might have affected you before, or what might have come through with your karmic pattern. It comes down to how much responsibility you're willing to take. You can consider it a risk to use this information. But I tell you, it's no more risky than using anything else that's out there. It's a whole lot less risky. I know that. You're not going to know that until you come to a knowing of it, and I can't give you that. That's why I'll never try to force you to believe these things. Nobody says you have to. I share what I know will help because I know what it did for me. And it's because of the gratitude of what it did for me. I mean, it's so wonderful when you start to get your incarnational things in sequence, where you remember exactly what time frame they came from, and you can watch them like movies, and you feel your consciousness there. There's a wholeness. You feel your eternity. When you start to realize you're not just confined to this space and body, that you're there as that being and there as that being, there's an irreplaceable sense of I am indestructible. You can destruct my body, somebody can kill my body, but it doesn't make you afraid. So I have lots of others, and I can make more if I need to. You begin to get in touch with your wholeness, and you begin to integrate your consciousness, and that's what the process of expanding the Christ consciousness is about. And the whole nature of the game changes. All the little things that you thought were important before, all the little, some people get sidetracked with like the magic tricks that the promise of the New Age entities can give you. You can learn to levitate, or you can learn to walk through walls, wouldn't that be great? You start to integrate these levels of self, and you bore yourself with that stuff. There's huge things you can do. They have nothing to do with just your power. When you start to realize that you are a we, you start to understand the concept of this universe being a we. And you start to realize that nothing feels more joyful and fulfilling than touching the other parts of the we with love. And if there's other parts of the we that are hurting, to help them not hurt anymore. You become not self-centered, but all-centered. People can be other-centered to the point where they totally let themselves get walked on. That is not useful. Because what you're doing is saying, I care so little about the God that is in me that I'm going to martyr myself to these other people. Because what they want, their little whims and desires, and their opinions, are more important than the God that's in me. People do this when they don't recognize the God that's in them. And what's funny is that I end up doing the same thing. They can't recognize it in themselves, they won't recognize it in others either, so they won't be able to love others genuinely either. Other people go into the I am me stand, where all of a sudden, I feel my spiritual lows, right? They're getting in touch with the God presence. However, they're doing it in a way where all of a sudden nobody else matters. It's their whims, what feels good to them, their sensual pleasures, what they think is the most important thing, and they inflict it on everybody who comes their way. Some people go that way with it. That's the total I am focused on myself and totally self-absorbed state of being. That's not the way it works either. You have to balance what you really do if you want to become spiritually integrated. You balance two things: other-centeredness and self-centeredness. And you balance them into something called Christ-centeredness, Christos-centeredness, or Maharaj-centeredness, which means you are aware of, at all times, yourself as a part of a team, a part of a larger being, with whatever collective you're in, with whatever group you're in. You are immediately, because you're part of that group, you are a part of that group. And you keep that awareness. That doesn't mean you let that group control you or direct you, but you realize what you do with yourself and your energy has a direct bearing on whether that group is going to evolve or is going to devolve. There is no neutral turf in this. What you do with yourself is either going to take you up into a higher expanded space or down. Same thing with the groups around you and the people around you. You learn to balance it. You also learn if you're in a group and the group is overbearing and it's trying to push you and it's trying to say, oh, well, we'll reject you if you don't do that or don't do that. Or there's something wrong with you because you don't think like us. You have enough of your own God presence to say, excuse me, I beg to differ. No matter what you do, you're not going to convince me of that. We can like each other anyway, or you can choose to kick me out of your group, whatever you prefer. I can love you the way you are, and you love me the way I am. You learn to balance it, where you don't have to sacrifice you for them and them for you. This is what it means to go into expansion, and this is what you have to look forward working with these teachings. Part of what that's going to mean is being responsible enough to say, it's very possible that you have no, well, forget very possible. Most people come into a space like this having no idea what might be attached to their DNA or to their fields. If you're mature enough to face that fact, that no matter how great I think I am, until I learn about the fact that things could happen and the fact that I have these fields and what levels of them to look at and how to make sure that's not happening, you cannot say to yourself that I know God well, I was perfectly pure and I walked in that door and then I walked out and stuff was with me. You're not going to get any stuff with you from this workshop except tools on what to do with yourself. Our guys will not attach to you. They're not going to be host makers for you, like a lot of the gurus are. They're plugging you into the fields. And if they happen to be a good guy helping to get you across, and you're a being that doesn't have 12-strand potential, that's good. If you're a human being or a Maji, you don't need to be plugged into their field. And if they happen to be somebody who's messing with people, you're going to go down with them, okay? You won't get any of that from here. I got people. One lady in the New York City workshop was really bizarre. What will often happen is it's so hard to tell, because if you don't know what you came in with, you don't know what's with you in the first place, you hope nothing that didn't belong there. You come into a paradigm, it could be this workshop, it could be another. There's a lot of workshops you are getting implanted in. I've seen it happen, and it's devastating because I didn't realize it was happening. I went to one, and I had my guy said, turn on your inner visions. Okay. I turned it on. Oh, I don't want to. What I saw were reptilian things that looked like reptilian ghost forms hanging over the top of the, stretching cords down into people's heart chakras from the back. And I said, get out of the room. He said, no, they're going to sit there and you're going to hold frequency, and you're going to move D12 frequency into the room, and it did. And what happened when I did was, I was watching, the cords were dropping. The cords that these things were sending to people were dropping off. And then you noticed the speaker find me. All of a sudden, what was working through him found me. And I zeroed in on me, like, ooh, it's you. You know what I mean? Said, no, it's them. I'm just sitting here. I'm just sitting here holding the frequency. They're going to come. Let them come after them. Leave me out of it, right? And I just like, just sit there. Just hold the frequency. I'm here. No, just sit there. And I just sat there. Finally, a part of me, my own self, kicked in and said, I'm not going to be afraid of you creeps. That's not nice. I will sit here and I will hold frequency. You can't hurt me. And I just sat there, and I just started to look at the speaker and just stare at it. Yeah, and just listen to it, just stare at it. I could take one, politely. Making him real nervous. I kept pacing to the other side of the room to get away from what was transmitting through the field, where our guys were trying to help him. So yes, you can get implanted by going to a workshop. You can get messed up by using the wrong technique. I'm one of the few people I've ever heard in the workshop talk about the fact that you can do this. You know?
And I'd like to ask the question, there must be some groups that can take the souls back.
That's an interesting way to put it. Must be some gurus who can take the souls back. You mean if somebody attaches the field, that some people can get that separated?
There must be a way back to the souls that is always there for them. There must be a way. You can't trap it forever.
Sometimes relative, but you're right.
Yeah, so there must be sons or daughters of God that come into the world to take those souls back who want to go back.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be a way through you. I mean, there will be a way through another person.
There is a way, always, through the self. I can serve as a host matrix. What you're talking about is a host matrix. A host matrix is a being with, sometimes they only have 7-strand activation potential. Sometimes they don't even have a 12-strand pattern potential. They will come in, and their energy fields, they'll start activating, and their energy fields will be used to attach other people's astral fields to them. Now, they can take them places. If it's a 7-strand being, it's not going to take you any higher than D7, because it can't go yet. It's still evolving. The only time host matrices are used are in races that don't have the Christos spark, which is a frequency pattern that in the physical body exists in the first and first stage cells at the tail bone, which means they don't have a 12-strand imprint potential in their bodies. There are 2 ways you can help a being like that. The first way is not a way that High Council approves of, unless it's absolutely necessary, where they don't have the brain capacity to do the other way. The one way that is only used in emergencies is to send in a being that has X amount of strand level, but it will be a being that has 12-strand potential, to allow the field attachment, and then take them through to density 2, and then free them, where it's then their job to evolve from there. Nobody's going to hold your hand and ascend you. This is one of the lies that's being told all over the place and has been for centuries. Hold my hand and I'll take you through the gates. Yeah, right. Nobody is going to take you through the gates. You come in alone and you go out alone. And that is the truth of the matter. Now you can, it's just like the passage. You can come in with like 20,000 people, and then one at a time you can't go alone. And then you can run your way back out. Go with a collective of 20,000 people, but you'll go through that little chamber, that little doorway, into out, one by one. If you are tasked or thinking of having somebody walk you through, what you're saying is, I don't want the responsibility to take responsibility for my energy fields here. And when you have that attitude, you will find lots of cycles of time.
You're not necessary, because like a real master will say that you must be responsible for yourself, and I'm pointing in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
You do A, B, and C, and you will walk through. If you don't do A, B, and C, you probably will reincarnate.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, what I'm trying to
Some masters, a good master,
Yeah.
will say that. But what a lot of the masters do is say, just, you have to follow me. I'm the only one that has the truth. I will get you through. This is nonsense, okay? When the thing is, you don't need somebody else to walk you through. What you need is the knowledge of how to remember how to get yourself through. Now, what is usually used by High Council is something called a Melchizedek ordination, a Melchizedek cloister ordination. What this does is transmit to a person the full 12-strand pattern, the template. It can only be transmitted by somebody who has one, and who has one activated to a certain degree, that at least they can leave that energy signature with you. If you come in with 4 strands, even if you're a human that has 4 strands, but you're supposed to have 12 strands, but the other 12 damaged, the templates are all damaged, it will reset the potential of the D12 template. This is why we don't play the guru game. We don't do the host matrix game. All we say is if a person comes in, if let's say a person who was a draconian soul that was in a human body, because they're a draconian soul, they only have 10-strand potential. They don't have the Christos spark. We could give them, there's 2 things that person can do to continue evolution. They can go find a guru, plug them in to get them through the gate, or they can have no ordination and take some responsibility for themselves. They get the ordination, all of a sudden they have the dormant missing strands, which means they have the capacity to plug in those frequencies now. So we do the ordination system, where it's only certain soul groups choose to do the guru thing. Ours never do that, because it doesn't teach independence. It teaches dependence. And usually they get stuck in the upper cycles. They get stuck in the oversoul cycles, and they get stuck in the lower avatar cycles, where they go around and around and around again. It depends on if you want to get out of here and get control and mastery, or if you want to play sheep for a while. So that's the difference. Now, the original question was, because are there people who can get the souls back if somebody takes them or bothers them?
I mean, in a sense, you are a guru. You mean teacher.
I'm a teacher, yes, but it has a very nasty connotation in this world that I don't want.
You could say that some Indian gurus are also teachers.
Some, yes. And when I was Kananda, I was that.
Yeah, who don't want to be bad and scrape through. They're just taking it to do.
Excuse me, I need to get this up. He really bothers me. Now, there are some lovely teachers. What's sad is in this day and age, guru used to be a respectable word. All right, in this day and age, it isn't anymore, because it's been so abused. Ascended master used to be a respectable word. It isn't anymore in this day and age, because everybody's using it falsely. There are good teachers. Some of them will allow that hosting to be done. Now, the original question was, aren't there people that can get those souls back, was where this came from. This comes into a different line. This comes into, you're basically asking, can a person be depossessed, or if they've been bounced out of their body through a possession, can they be recollected and brought back home? Yes, they can. There are people who know how to do this. Some people call it soul retrieval. Soul retrieval, where they literally find the energy and attach it back to its own body, get the thing out of the body that wasn't supposed to be there, so evolution can continue. If they lose the body, there are beings who will take it through into the light to the next level. And I've served that a lot. Okay, usually that's one of the beginning trainings. If you ever find yourself helping dead people across, that's a job. It's an assignment. It's like starting as a girl or guy Friday in a corporation where you're going to go for it, and you go help, and it's a level of service. Then you'll get upgraded to other things. Okay, this is part of the trainings we get. Now I'd like to get, we're going to go crazy with questions here.
Are there gurus that take you to the top of the sound current, the academic makers, in their own energy field?
Only if they're Eckhars. Yeah. Only if they have 48 strand templates. Yeah. And most of them will not do it. They will teach you how to do it yourself.
Right.
Okay. The only person that should ask me, is there anybody that can take you to that top space, that acadic level of the sound fields? Right? Carry me. The only persons that could do such a thing, if they're going to be in physical form, the only type of physical form person you can find that could do that kind of thing, is a being that had full 48-strand DNA template. Now, the Maharaji of Series B have that. That's their general orientation. They have, they're indicos, literally. But they have 48-strand. Most of them have 48 strands. Some of them have 46. Some of them have 45. But they could take you in their energy field, like literally attach your field to theirs, take you all the way up to the academy. Except there'd be a problem. If you couldn't get up there by yourself, your template would blow up in the process. They can't take you. Nobody can take you higher than you can go yourself, is what it comes down to. You can get help going through a gate, but you can't be taken into full ascension until your own template can hold it. Something can hold your template temporarily, but then it's either going to be with you from now until eternity, or it's going to have to let you go at some point. And if it lets you go and you don't hold those frequencies, you're fragmented. So those processes aren't used. Something from the Catholic level is going to say, here, attach to me, and take you up there and say, I'm going now, and have you, disintegrate into a million pieces where you have to start your evolution all over again as space dust. So, anyway, it's totally not at all the subject matter I was going to talk about. Let's get back on track a little, because there's something we need to get to. Is Michael still here, or did he decide to kind of give up and do what he needed to do? Is tea time? Your kids. Oh, Lord. Oh, dear. One more, 1, 2, 3. We can do a 10-minute. I can use a sort of. I can get through this stuff, but we have to make a deal. If you want me to get through the rest of the presentation stuff, yeah, can we wait for later or when we're on the site or something else for questions? Because this is taking up the whole morning. But I want you to know I care about your questions, and I care about all of you in the audience. So I'll say, okay, we'll talk about that later if you want to talk about this. But there is some things I want, or are some things that I want to share with you that have to do with the history a little, because there's some things I haven't plugged in for you that will help you to understand what I've talked about so far. And there's one real important thing that we're going to do right after we get back from this real short tea break. It's called the activating sequence for the Kundera Rainbow Roundtable. It's a whole sequence of, and if you want to run the full Kundera during this roundtable, it's the Master's Kundalini activations, the Emerald Awakening and the Amethyst Awakening. And it's a whole series of steps that will be read to you. Follow them as best you can. If you participate with it, even if you lose track of the steps, it's still going on. There's enough group field around you that will have those frequencies open. But they will not if you choose not to participate. So it's not something that you have to do or something you're going to be zapped with. With these activations, see, somebody could come up and say, poof, here you go, you're activated. I could activate you, but we don't do that. That would be an infringement on your space. We show you how to activate yourself with these things, and that's the way it should be. So we're going to do that as soon as we get back, because we need to get these currents running for this afternoon's roundtable outside. Okay?
Only 10 minutes. Yes. Bring it back in.
Not because they have ordination to receive the 12-strand template, then they are capable of knowing Maharaj. But only 12-strand humans can run the little subharmonics of the Kundera and the Kirche. The indigos have the capacity to run large portions of the Kundera and the Kirche. The Kundera and the Kirche can be run only after the Maharada current is running. Because if you remember the graph that we had up yesterday with the 15-dimensional time matrix and the little pillars of current building up, we have the first 9 dimensions of current being the Kundalini, or the Antikarana. That has to activate. Then dimension 10, 11, 12, Maharada activates. Then dimension 13, 14, and 15, subharmonics will activate. That's the Kirche. And then the primal sound field currents can activate. So you literally have to create this bridge of frequency and open it in the body. The process of being able to run frequency in the body to that degree requires the release of those star crystal seals that we showed on the one graph of the chakras, where the chakras were running down the main vertical current, and there was those little star things in between. They have to momentarily open to allow little bursts of the current to come through. Now, when we're first learning to activate, it will be a long time before this changes. We will receive tiny millions or trillions of a nanosecond bursts of this frequency. Those little star crystal seals will just open just so fast that you couldn't even catch them on a camera for high-speed film camera. If they were just to open and let the current flow, you'd be out of here. There's a little dust behind it and land. Your body and your higher consciousness know how to regulate these currents. So, Michael is going to read to you what the Emerald and Amethyst Awakening exercises are. There's a couple of steps in between, and you don't have to do this all the time. Like if you want to run a Rainbow Roundtable or do a salutation, you don't need to activate these currents. But if you want to run the Rainbow Ray, which is the Kundera, the sound and light fields, the primal sound and light fields, to do a major Stargate type thing where you're working major grid work and you're getting guidance to do that kind of thing, you would have to use this activation sequence, and it's a sequence. Yes?
I wanted to ask you, is that where we did last night with the Maharada current, the D12, and then you saw the rainbow, you pushed D13?
That would be a subharmonic of it when you start to see little rainbow flashes. But what we're talking about with the rainbow ray current is the full spectrums of the primal sound fields, which wouldn't even have a light equivalent, but you will see the Kira-shaped ones. That's where you might start to get like rainbow colors moving through. Sometimes you will find that coming up from the Earth's grids through the Maharada current when you activate it, and sometimes you can move that through your body, but to open it fully in your body, where it's going through your DNA template, so it's really processing, and not just kind of like a subharmonic reflection. When we're dealing with it when we don't do these activations, any type of rainbow that's running through that you see is a subharmonic reflection, which means it's a little bit of that frequency, but only like a ghost image of it that's attached to the Maharada current. Now, when we get into these activations, and they're not going to harm you. That's what's nice about these activations. Some people do Kundalini activations, they'll be able to like this for days, because it's activated at the base of the spine. What a Kundalini activation does is it begins release of what's called the craniosacral seals. The craniosacral seals are a set of frequency seals that form as etheric membranes, one at the base of the spine in the tailbone, and another in the pineal. They correspond to each other. They're seals that regulate how much of the primal life force currents are going to be able to move through the body. Those seals in the tailbone and the pineal are controlled by the star crystal seals in the body. So when you release these seals and begin to let them open, you are allowing these seals, in the craniosacral seals, to open and allow more current to run through. If this is done wrong, some people do like tantric type things, tend to get you into Kundalini activations, but they're not doing it through Maharada, which makes sure, at least at that moment, your template is straight, so the fire letter sequences go the right way. You can get really bad experiences with Kundalini activations if they're not done properly. These are done properly, where they're going with the Maharada current, and they're done in a way where those seals will release at the right rhythm, at the right time in relation to each other. Now, it's worth doing Kundalini activations if you want to accelerate your spiritual development, your integration, and if you want to accelerate the healing of your own DNA template. Every time you do it, it will assist in holding more of that frequency and more of the divine blueprint. Because you can turn the divine blueprint down when you run a Maharada seal, but if you let that seal go down and don't do it for 6 weeks, you're going to go back to whatever your template was before, whatever light bulbs you turned on with the Maharada current. If you don't keep that current there, they're going to turn back off again until you get them to a critical mass where it holds that frequency and they just stay turned on. This is the objective of working with the currents. When you begin to use these activations, which can be a pain in the neck because there's a bunch of steps you have to follow, easiest way to do it is to put them on tape. They're in your field guides, so you do have these with you. This will assist in the process of being able to hold that frequency longer, meaning it will be sooner when those light bulbs stay on once you turn them on. So it's worth doing it, but if you have any apprehensions about doing it, or if you're not sure about our work, or anything like that, if there's any fear or anything like that, you don't have to. There's no obligation, and nobody will do it to you. Okay, you're being read the steps of how to do these, so you just, you follow the steps. If you lose track of some of the steps as they go, that's okay. There's enough of the group energy holding this that once you're given permission to allow it to run, if you miss 5 steps, it'll pick up in your system where it was, because you have the support of the group field doing it. And you have, others of us that are used to running it, so the body knows what to do. If you do not want it done, you'll be fine. If you just simply hold that intention, it will not affect you. You don't have to run anything, and nobody next to you is going to make yours run. So I just wanted you to know that. And Michael's going to read them, and then he's going to read the introduction to what this is, give you a little clearer idea of exactly what's opening and things like that. And then he's going to run the exercise. We're doing this now because you need to activate it ideally a little bit before. Before we had to do it like a day before. We weren't even allowed to do it the same day to give the currents a chance to adjust. But they said the people in this particular group are able to hold large amounts of frequency, plus the grids underneath them, the island grids, are sustaining it. So we're allowed this time to run this particular sequence right before a round. But we're doing it now instead of at 3 o'clock to give our body some time to adjust to it in this currents. So I will turn you over to Michael.